The morning sun painted Arlington National Cemetery in shades of gold and shadow. Kate Morrison stood before her father's grave, the marble headstone reflecting 3 years of unanswered questions. The carved letters seemed to mock her. Thomas Morrison, Gunnery Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, 1965 to 2017. Beloved father, faithful Marine. The words said nothing about how he really died. Kate wore her dress uniform, the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal catching the light. 3 ribbons adorned her chest, each one earned through sweat and discipline. But they felt hollow now. Empty symbols of a service that had taken everything from her family and given back only grief wrapped in a folded flag. She knelt on the grass, still damp with morning dew, and placed her hand on the cold stone. The chill traveled up her arm, settling somewhere deep in her chest where the guilt lived. 3 years. 3 years since she had watched them lower her father into the earth. 3 years since she had made a promise she could not keep. The wind carried the scent of cut grass and distant rain. Kate closed her eyes and let the memories flood back, no longer fighting them. She had spent 3 years trying to forget. Now she needed to remember everything. Wyoming, December 2017. The ranch house sat nestled in the valley like it had grown there, weathered wood and stone blending into the landscape. Snow capped the distant mountains, their peaks sharp against a sky so blue it hurt to look at. This was home. This was where Thomas Morrison had taught his daughters that strength came not from never falling, but from getting up every single time. Kate had been 29 that winter, working as a Navy corpsman at Camp Pendleton. She had chosen the medical track deliberately, a way to serve without becoming what her father was, a way to heal instead of hurt. Thomas had never pushed her toward the rifle, never demanded she follow his path. He understood that his older daughter needed to find her own way to serve. Rachel was different. At 13, she already showed the same natural gift their father possessed. Kate would watch them together in the early mornings, father and daughter moving through the ritual of preparation. The way Thomas checked the rifle, the gentle patience as he guided Rachel's breathing, the quiet pride when she hit targets at distances that should have been impossible for someone her age. In those moments, Kate saw the future Thomas had always wanted, a legacy passing undimmed to the next generation. The ranch had belonged to their grandfather, a Marine who had fought at Chosin Reservoir. 3 generations of Morrisons had learned to shoot in these hills, learned to read wind and distance and the weight of responsibility that came with precision. Their mother had died bringing Rachel into the world, a hemorrhage the rural hospital could not stop. Thomas had raised both daughters alone, pouring into them everything he knew about honor and duty and the kind of courage that had nothing to do with pulling triggers. Kate remembered the evening Colonel Henrikson's letter arrived. She had been home for Christmas leave, watching Rachel practice dry firing in the den while their father prepared dinner. The envelope was thin, official-looking without being military. Thomas had opened it standing by the kitchen window, the December light making his graying hair look almost white. She had watched his expression change, the easy smile fading, the lines around his eyes deepening. He read it twice, then folded it carefully and slid it back into the envelope. When he looked up and saw Kate watching, he tried to smile. Failed. Dinner that night had been quiet. Rachel chattered about school, about the new scope Thomas had promised her for Christmas, about whether she could try for a 1,000-yard shot next summer. Thomas listened and nodded and said little. Kate studied him across the table, seeing the weight settling on his shoulders. She knew that look. It was the look of a man being pulled back towards something he thought he had left behind. Later, after Rachel had gone to bed, Thomas and Kate sat on the porch. The temperature had dropped below freezing, but neither moved to go inside. The stars blazed overhead, so many and so bright they seemed close enough to touch. Thomas nursed a coffee gone cold, staring out at the dark shapes of the mountains. Kate waited. She had learned patience from this man, learned that sometimes silence was the only way to let truth find its way to the surface. Finally, Thomas spoke. His voice was quiet, almost lost in the vast stillness of the Wyoming night. A Marine unit is pinned down in Afghanistan, Helmand Province. They have been taking casualties for 3 days. The Taliban has them in a kill zone and they cannot break free. They need someone who can shoot from distance, someone who can create an opening. Kate felt her chest tighten. Why you? You have been retired for 2 years. Thomas smiled, but there was no humor in it, because most of the young ones have never had to make this kind of shot under these conditions. Because I have. Because Jim Henriksen asked me personally, and Marines do not leave Marines behind. Jim Henriksen. Kate knew the name. Her father's old mentor, the man who had trained him decades ago. A legend among Marine snipers. If Henriksen was asking, the situation was desperate. How long would you be gone? Thomas shrugged. 2 weeks, maybe 3. I would fly out next week, be back before New Year. Kate wanted to scream, wanted to grab her father and shake him, and demand to know why 52-year-old retired Marines had to fly into war zones to save young men who should have better support. But she had learned other things from Thomas Morrison too. She had learned that some debts could only be paid in person. She had learned that honor was not just a word you said, but a weight you carried. She had learned that sometimes love meant letting go, even when every cell in your body screamed to hold on tighter. Promise me something, she said. Anything, Katie girl. Promise me this is the last time. Promise me you come back and you stay back. Rachel needs you here. She is at an age where she needs her father more than the Corps needs another sniper. Thomas looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached out and took her hand. His palm was calloused from decades of working with weapons and tools, warm despite the cold. I promise, this is the last time. After this, I am done. I will be here to teach Rachel everything she needs to know. I will be here to walk you down the aisle when you find someone worth marrying. I will be here to meet my grandchildren. This is the last mission. I give you my word. Kate squeezed his hand. Your word is good enough. They sat together until the cold drove them inside. Kate went to bed that night believing her father's promise. Believing that in 3 weeks he would be home safe, hanging up his gear for the final time, settling into the quiet life of a grandfather in waiting. She had been wrong. Thomas Morrison left for Afghanistan on December 23rd. Kate drove him to the airport in Casper, Rachel bundled in the back seat, unusually quiet. At the departures curb, Thomas hugged both daughters tight. He held Rachel longest, whispering something Kate could not hear. Then he grabbed his single duffel bag, gave them that crooked smile they both loved, and walked into the terminal without looking back. Kate watched until he disappeared into the crowd. Rachel cried quietly in the passenger seat. Kate did not cry. She had learned from her father that tears were private things, saved for when you were alone. Christmas came and went. New Year arrived. Thomas called twice from Bagram, his voice distant and scratchy over the satellite connection. He said little about the mission, only that it was progressing, that he would be home soon, that he missed them both. January 5th, 2 MPs arrived at the ranch. Kate knew what they were going to say before they spoke. She had seen enough death notifications during her time as a corpsman, recognized the weight they carried, the rehearsed sympathy in their eyes. Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Morrison had been killed in action on January 3rd while providing overwatch for a Marine unit engaged with Taliban forces. He had died a hero. His actions had saved the lives of 12 Marines. He would be awarded the Bronze Star with Valor posthumously. The Corps extended its deepest sympathies. Kate listened to the words without really hearing them. Rachel stood beside her, frozen, not crying, not moving, just standing there as their world crumbled into before and after. Before their father died, after. The funeral was large. Marines came from across the country, men who had served with Thomas over his 24-year career. Colonel Henriksen flew in from Virginia, his face carved from grief. He approached Kate after the service, tried to find words, failed. Finally, he just handed her a small box. Your father wanted you to have this. He left it with me before the mission. Said to give it to you if anything happened. Inside was Thomas's original dog tag from boot camp, worn smooth by decades of wear. On the back, someone had scratched a message. Katie, be strong for Rachel. Live the life I wanted. Love always, Dad. Kate closed the box and thanked Henriksen. She did not cry. Not at the funeral, not during the 21-gun salute. Not when they folded the flag and handed it to Rachel because she was technically next of kin as the youngest dependent. Kate stood straight and dry-eyed and let Rachel lean against her shoulder while the bugler played taps across the frozen Wyoming morning. It was not until a week later, sorting through her father's belongings, that Kate found the first thread that would unravel everything. She was packing his uniforms, folding them with the precision he had taught her, when she noticed something odd about his dress blues. The jacket was heavier on one side. She checked the pockets and found nothing, but the weight was definitely there. She examined the lining more carefully and discovered a hidden pocket, sewn in with such skill she had almost missed it. Inside was a photograph, Old, faded, the edges worn from handling. It showed three men in desert camouflage, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera. Kate recognized her father immediately. Younger, hair still dark, the lines around his eyes not yet carved deep by years of squinting through scopes. Next to him stood another American, tall and rangy with a commander's bearing. The third man was clearly Russian, Slavic features, different uniform, but the same warrior's confidence in his stance. Kate flipped the photo over. Written in faded ink, Ghost and Shadow, Mogadishu 1993. Never forget. She stared at the image, trying to make sense of it. Her father had never mentioned serving in Somalia. His service record listed deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, but nothing about Mogadishu. Nothing about operations with Russians. And who were Ghost and Shadow? Kate kept digging. She went through every box, every folder, every scrap of paper her father had saved. She found medals and commendations, found letters from Marines he had served with, found photos of her and Rachel growing up. But nothing else about Mogadishu. Nothing about the mysterious Russians. Nothing that explained the hidden photograph. The official autopsy report arrived 3 weeks after the funeral. Kate read it in the kitchen while Rachel was at school, the winter light harsh through the windows. The medical language was clinical, stripped of emotion. Gunshot wound to the head, entry wound posterior skull, death instantaneous. Kate read that line 3 times. Entry wound posterior skull. Posterior meant back. Her father had been shot from behind. The official story said Thomas had died during a firefight, providing cover for retreating Marines, engaging enemy combatants to the front. But you did not get shot in the back of the head while engaging targets to your front. You got shot in the back of the head when someone behind you pulled a trigger. Kate called the casualty assistance officer, asked for clarification, was told the report was accurate. Her father had been killed by enemy fire. The angle of entry was due to the complex nature of the engagement. Taliban fighters had been shooting from multiple positions. It was chaos. These things happened. The explanation felt wrong. Kate had worked enough trauma cases to know ballistics. She knew wound patterns. She knew that a trained sniper in a defensive position did not expose his back to enemy fire. Not unless something had gone catastrophically wrong. Not unless someone he trusted had betrayed him. She tried to push the thoughts away. Tried to tell herself she was looking for a conspiracy where there was only the random brutality of combat. But the questions would not stop. The photograph of the 3 men, the hidden pocket, the impossible angle of the wound, the pieces did not fit together. Winter gave voice to spring. Kate returned to Camp Pendleton, threw herself into her work, tried to be the big sister Rachel needed, calling every evening, video chatting on weekends. Tried to ignore the growing certainty that her father had been murdered and everyone was lying about it. It was Rachel who finally pushed Kate to act. June 2018. Rachel had just turned 14. Kate came home for her birthday, found her little sister in the workshop converting their father's reloading bench into her own workspace. Rachel had always been small for her age, but she moved with Thomas's same economy of motion, setting up her equipment with the same methodical precision. They shot together that weekend, just the 2 of them, Rachel at 200 yards with her rimfire rifle, Kate spotting with binoculars. Rachel's groups were tight, professional. She had her father's gift. That evening on the porch, Rachel asked the question Kate had been avoiding. Do you think Dad would be proud of me? Kate looked at her sister, 14 years old and already carrying too much weight. Of course he would be proud. He is proud, wherever he is. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that changed everything. I do not think he died the way they said. Kate's heart skipped. What makes you say that? Rachel pulled out a small notebook. Inside were diagrams, calculations, notes written in their father's precise hand. I found this in his gun safe. He wrote it the night before he left. It is a mission analysis. Look at the terrain sketch. Kate studied the diagram. It showed elevated positions, sight lines, distances. Her father had been planning an overwatch position. The sketch showed him oriented toward a valley, covering an exfiltration route. Rachel pointed to the diagram. If Dad was here watching this direction, how did someone shoot him from behind? Taliban would have been in the valley. Dad's position has rock wall behind it. Nobody could get behind him unless they were already there. Unless they were friendly. Kate stared at her 14-year-old sister. When did you figure this out? Rachel's eyes were dry but hard. the day they told us how he died. I know angles. I know fields of fire. Dad taught me. The story never made sense. I just did not want to believe it. Kate pulled Rachel close. They sat together as the sun set over the mountains their father had loved. Somewhere in that moment, Kate made a decision. She could keep working as a corpsman, keep trying to heal broken bodies while her father's murder went unanswered, or she could become what she had always avoided becoming. She could pick up the rifle. She could learn her father's trade. She could find out who killed Thomas Morrison and why. The next morning, Kate submitted her application to Marine Scout Sniper School. The paperwork took 3 months to process. Kate used the time to prepare. She ran the hills around the ranch until her lungs burned. She shot every day, pushing her distances, refining her fundamentals. She read every manual on long-range shooting she could find. She called in favors from Marine friends, got introduced to instructors, learned what the school would demand. Rachel helped. Every evening they would sit together cleaning weapons, talking about wind calls and ballistics. Rachel was teaching herself advanced mathematics to better understand trajectories. At 14, she could calculate corrections faster than Kate could write them down. Their father's gift, refined by obsession. The hardest part was not the physical preparation. It was accepting what Kate was choosing to become. She had spent her entire adult life avoiding her father's path. Now she was sprinting toward it. Every time she picked up the rifle, she felt like she was betraying the younger version of herself who had sworn she would heal, not harm. But she also felt closer to Thomas than she had since his death. Understanding now why he had spent so many hours in the workshop, why he had been so meticulous about every detail, why he had treated every shot like a sacred responsibility. This was not about killing, it was about protection, about being the guardian standing between the vulnerable and those who would do them harm. October 2018, Kate reported to Camp Lejeune for the Scout Sniper Basic Course. Of the 43 Marines who started, 6 were women. The instructors made no allowances. The standards were absolute. Pass or fail. There was no middle ground. The first week broke half the class, humping through swamps with 80-pound packs, crawling through mud for hours, lying motionless while instructors walked within feet, hunting for any sign of movement. Kate welcomed the suffering. Pain was simple. Pain was clean. Pain did not ask questions about dead fathers and hidden photographs. She excelled at stalking, moving through terrain without being seen, getting close enough to engage targets without being detected. Her small frame was an advantage. She could fold herself into spaces larger Marines could not fit. Her medical training helped her understand how the human eye tracked movement, how to exploit blind spots and expectation. The shooting was harder, not the marksmanship itself. Kate had grown up with rifles. She understood the fundamentals. But the mental game was different. In the medical world, every action was about preserving life. Here, every action was in service of taking it. The target silhouettes had human shapes. The training scenarios used terminology that made the purpose explicit. She was learning to kill people from distances where they would never see her coming. 3 months in, during a night training exercise, Kate had her breakdown. She was set up in a hide site, prepared to engage a target at 800 yards. The target was a silhouette marked as an enemy combatant. Kate had made this shot 1,000 times, but that night as her finger touched the trigger, she suddenly saw her father instead. Saw Thomas Morrison kneeling in the dirt, unaware of the rifle trained on the back of his head. Saw the finger tightening on the trigger. Saw him fall. Kate lowered her rifle and vomited into the dirt. Could not stop shaking. Could not breathe. The instructors found her 20 minutes later, still shaking, still gasping for air. They sent her to the base psychologist, standard procedure for anyone showing signs of combat stress during training. The doctor was a woman in her 50s, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She let Kate sit in silence for 15 minutes before speaking. "You do not have to do this. The Corps needs good corpsmen as much as it needs snipers. Maybe more." Kate shook her head. "I have to." "Why?" "Because someone killed my father and made it look like combat. Because he was a sniper and they shot him from behind. Because the only way I will ever find out who did it is to become what he was. To walk the same path. To understand the world he lived in." The psychologist was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something Kate never forgot. "Revenge is not a good reason to become a sniper, but justice might be. The difference is that revenge is about making yourself feel better. Justice is about making things right. You need to know which one you are really after. Kate thought about that for a week, thought about what she really wanted. Was this about punishing whoever killed Thomas Morrison? Or was it about clearing his name? About proving he was not just another casualty of a random war, but a man who had been murdered because he knew something, or had seen something, or represented some kind of threat? She realized the answer was both, and she realized that was okay. Justice and accountability were not mutually exclusive. She could want both. Kate returned to training with renewed focus. She stopped seeing her father's face on every target, started seeing the mission, the purpose. She was not learning to kill for the sake of killing. She was learning to protect. And if part of that protection meant hunting down the people who had murdered Thomas Morrison, then that was what she would do. April 2019. Kate graduated top of her class. The commandant pinned the scout sniper insignia on her uniform personally, told her she had shown exceptional skill and dedication, that the Corps was proud to have her. Standing at attention while the commandant spoke, Kate thought about her father, wondered if he was watching somehow, wondered if he was proud or horrified or both. She had become what she had always sworn she would never be, a trained killer, someone who could end a life from 1,000 yards away and sleep soundly afterward. But she had also become what her father had always been, a guardian, someone who stood between the helpless and the predators, someone willing to carry the weight so others did not have to. After the ceremony, Kate found a quiet spot behind the barracks. She pulled out the dog tag her father had left her. Read the message again. Katie, be strong for Rachel. Live the life I wanted. Love always, Dad. She understood now. The life Thomas had wanted for her was not necessarily the life she would have chosen, but it was the life she needed to live, the life that would lead her to the truth, the life that would bring justice for a good man who had died alone in a foreign land, shot by someone he should have been able to trust. Kate returned to Wyoming on leave before her first deployment. Rachel was 15 now, already as tall as Kate, rail-thin and intense. She had spent the year refining her skills, could hit targets at 1,200 yards consistently, was already better than most Marine snipers twice her age. They spent a week together, just the two of them, shooting in the mornings, riding horses through the high country in the afternoons, sitting on the porch at night talking about everything and nothing, not talking about their father's death, but feeling his presence in every conversation. The night before Kate left, Rachel gave her a gift, a small notebook, handmade, bound in leather. Inside, Rachel had copied their father's notes about wind reading, about breathing control, about the mental preparation required for long-range work. On the first page, she had written, "For Kate, so Dad's lessons live on through you." Kate hugged her sister, holding on longer than usual, 15 years old and already the strongest person Kate knew, growing up too fast in a world that demanded too much from all of them. "Take care of yourself," Kate said. "I will be back in 7 months." Rachel nodded. "I know. Just promise me you will be careful. I cannot lose you too." "I promise." Kate kept that promise. Her first deployment to Afghanistan was uneventful. 7 months of providing overwatch for convoy operations, clearing routes, occasional shots at distant targets who threatened her Marines. She performed well, got good fitness reports, was recommended for advanced training. But she was also investigating. Every chance she got, Kate asked questions, talked to Marines who had served in Helmand in 2017, tried to find anyone who had been part of the operation her father had supported, the mission that had gotten him killed. She learned it had been classified at a higher level than she could access. The Marines who had been there were spread across different units now. Most would not talk about it. The few who would give vague answers. It had been a bad situation. Heavy contact. Morrison had saved their lives. That was all they could say. Kate pushed harder, started making inquiries through official channels, requested her father's complete service record, was told portions were classified, requested the after-action report from his final mission, was told it was sealed. The stonewalling only confirmed her suspicions. Someone did not want the truth about Thomas Morrison's death to come out. Someone with enough power to classify records, enough influence to make Marines stop talking. Kate needed help, needed someone with the clearances and access she lacked, needed someone who had been there, someone who knew what really happened in that valley in Helmand province. She needed Colonel James Henriksen. Finding Henriksen was not hard. He had retired the previous year and moved to Montana, of all places, to a ranch not 50 miles from Kate's family home. Whether that was coincidence or design, Kate did not know, but she knew she had to talk to him. October 2019. Kate was back in the States for 2 weeks between deployments. She drove to Henriksen's ranch unannounced, found him in his workshop, working on a rifle. He was 58 years old, still lean and hard, silver hair cut military short. His eyes were the kind that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. Henriksen looked up when Kate entered, studied her for a long moment. Then he set down his tools and gestured to a stool. "I wondered when you would come," he said. "Your father told me you would not let this go." Kate sat down. Her heart was hammering, but she kept her voice steady. "Tell me what really happened. Tell me how my father died." Henriksen was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with old grief. "What I tell you will change your life. Once you know, you cannot unknow it. You will have to make choices. Hard ones. Are you sure you want this?" Kate thought of her father's grave, of the lie carved into marble, of Rachel growing up believing their father had died honorably when the truth was something darker. "I am sure." Henriksen nodded slowly. Then he stood and locked the workshop door. When he returned, he was carrying a file folder. Classified documents he should not have possessed. Evidence he had been gathering for 2 years. He spread papers across the workbench. Photographs, reports, financial records. The pieces of a conspiracy that reached higher than Kate had imagined. "Your father was murdered," Henriksen said flatly, "shot by someone on his own side. And the man who ordered it is now a 3-star general commanding CENTCOM. His name is William Hargrove, and unless we stop him, he will keep killing to protect his secrets." Kate stared at the evidence spread before her, at the proof that her father's death had been no accident, that somewhere in the chain of command, a traitor had pointed a finger, and Thomas Morrison had died because of it. She looked up at Henriksen. "What do we do?" The old colonel's smile was grim. "We do what Marines do. We adapt, we overcome, and we make the bastards pay." That was the moment everything changed. The moment Kate Morrison stopped being just a sniper and became something more. A hunter, an investigator, a daughter seeking justice for a father who could no longer speak for himself. And somewhere in the dark corners of the world, the people who had killed Thomas Morrison were about to learn that they had made a terrible mistake. They had left his daughter alive, and she had inherited more than his skill with a rifle. She had inherited his stubborn refusal to let injustice stand, his willingness to fight against impossible odds, his absolute commitment to doing what was right no matter the cost. The war was not over. It was just beginning. And Kate Morrison was coming for everyone who had played a part in her father's death. Not for revenge, for justice, for truth, for the chance to finally let a good man rest in peace, knowing his name had been cleared and his sacrifice honored. She looked at Henriksen across the workshop, this older man who had been her father's friend and mentor, and made her choice. "Tell me everything. I'm ready to hear it all." Henriksen began to talk, and Kate listened. And the path that would lead her back to Afghanistan, back to the place where her father had died, began to unfold before her like a road she had been meant to walk all along. Outside the workshop, the Montana sun was setting over the mountains. The same mountains where Thomas Morrison had taught both his daughters to shoot, where he had instilled in them the values that would carry Kate through what was coming. Courage, integrity, the understanding that some things were worth dying for. Kate touched the dog tag hanging around her neck, felt the weight of her father's final message. "Be strong for Rachel. Live the life I wanted." She was being strong. She was living the life. And soon, very soon, she would make certain that Thomas Morrison's death meant something, that the men who had killed him would face the justice they had thought they could escape. The last shot had not been fired yet, not by a long way, and when it came, Kate Morrison would be the one pulling the trigger. Henriksen's workshop smelled of gun oil and old wood, scents that reminded Kate of her father's workbench back home. The October afternoon light slanted through the windows, illuminating dust motes that drifted like memories through the air. Spread across the scarred wooden surface were documents that should not exist, evidence of crimes that reached into the highest levels of military command. Kate Morrison studied each page with the focused intensity she had learned in sniper school. Photographs from Mogadishu in 1993, financial records showing offshore accounts, transcripts of conversations that had been classified beyond her clearance level. And at the center of it all, a name that made her blood run cold: General William Hargrove. Henriksen stood beside her, his weathered hands resting on the workbench. He had the stillness of a man who had spent decades in hide sites, watching and waiting. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of 26 years of silence. Your father and I met Hargrove in Somalia. He was a captain then, ambitious, smart, the kind of officer who could read a tactical situation and make decisions that saved lives. We respected him, trusted him. The old Marine paused, reaching for one of the photographs. It showed 3 Americans in desert camouflage standing with a Russian in different uniform. Kate recognized her father immediately, young and lean, with that easy confidence she remembered from childhood. Next to him stood a tall man with the bearing of command, Henriksen, and beside them both was the Russian from the hidden photograph, powerfully built with sharp Slavic features. This was taken 2 days after the Battle of Mogadishu, Henriksen continued. October 1993. Your father and I had been providing sniper support during the operation to capture IDID's lieutenants. When the Black Hawks went down, we were part of the rescue effort. Spent 18 hours under fire helping extract the survivors. Kate knew the story. Black Hawk down, the battle that had cost 18 American lives and left dozens more wounded. A tactical success that had turned into a strategic nightmare, broadcast across television screens and burned into the national consciousness. But she had never known her father had been there. The Russian is Viktor Antonov, Henriksen said, tapping the photograph. Spetsnaz, one of the best long-range shooters I have ever seen. He was attached to the UN mission, supposed to be an observer. But when the shooting started, he grabbed a rifle and fought alongside us. Saved your father's life twice that day. By the time it was over, the 3 of us had become brothers. Kate studied Antonov's face. Even in the grainy photograph, his eyes held an intensity that transcended the image. This was a man who understood the weight of the trigger, the responsibility of the shot. What does this have to do with Hargrove? Henriksen's expression darkened. 3 days after that photograph was taken, your father and Victor discovered something. Hargrove was selling weapons to the warlords. American rifles, ammunition, even intelligence about our patrol routes. He was getting paid in cash and diamonds, funneling it through offshore accounts. The same warlords we were fighting had gotten their weapons from an American captain. Kate felt the words like a physical blow. During Black Hawk down, not just during. Before, Hargrove's intelligence leaks helped set up the ambush. He told IDID's people when the raid was coming, what the flight paths would be, where our quick reaction forces were staged. The whole operation was compromised before it began. Those 18 Americans died because a captain wanted to get rich. The silence in the workshop was absolute. Kate could hear her own heartbeat, feel the pulse in her temples. Her father had known this, had carried this knowledge for more than 2 decades. Why did nobody say anything? Why did you not report him? Henriksen turned away, staring out the window at the Montana mountains. We tried. Your father documented everything. Took photographs of Hargrove meeting with Somali intermediaries. Recorded conversations. Built a case that should have sent him to Leavenworth for life. We brought it to our commanding officer. And 2 days later, someone tried to kill me. Sniper round through my window while I was sleeping. Missed my head by 6 inches. The investigation concluded it was a random shooting, probably local criminals. But I knew better. We all knew better. Kate's mind was racing, putting pieces together. So you stayed silent. Henriksen turned back to face her, and for the first time she saw the full weight of guilt in his eyes. Hargrove sent a message through an intermediary. If we spoke, our families would die. Your father had you. You were 6 years old. I had a wife and 2 daughters. Victor had an elderly mother in Russia. We made a choice. We stayed silent to keep you safe. Kate wanted to be angry, wanted to rage at these men for letting a traitor escape justice. But she understood. She had a sister. Would she have made a different choice if Rachel's life was on the line? What changed? Why did Dad go to Afghanistan in 2017? Because Hargrove never stopped. Over the years, your father kept tabs on him, watched him rise through the ranks. Captain to major, major to colonel, eventually to general. Every promotion bought with competence and connections, hiding the rot underneath. And the whole time, Hargrove was still selling secrets, still trading American lives for money. Henriksen pulled out another document, a classified intelligence report from 2016. It detailed weapon shipments to Taliban forces in Helmand province, American weapons that should have been in government armories. The report had been suppressed before it reached congressional oversight. Your father got hold of this through his old intelligence contacts. He recognized Hargrove's pattern. The same tactics, the same greed, just a different war. Thomas could not let it go anymore. He contacted Victor, contacted me, said it was time to finish what we started in Somalia. Time to stop Hargrove before he got more people killed. And Hargrove found out. Henriksen nodded slowly. I do not know how. We were careful, but yes, he found out. He could not kill all three of us at once without raising suspicion. So he was patient. He waited until your father was isolated. Waited until Thomas was in theater, in a combat zone where accidents happen. Then he sent someone your father trusted, someone close enough to get behind him. The workshop fell silent again. Kate stared at the evidence spread before her, seeing the shape of the conspiracy that had taken her father's life. 26 years of corruption, 26 years of betrayal. And at the center of it, a general who had built his career on the bodies of the men he had sworn to lead. Where is Viktor Antonov now? Henriksen's expression softened slightly. Hiding in Afghanistan. He went underground when Thomas was killed, knew he would be next. He has been moving from village to village, staying ahead of Hargrove's people, but he is 62 years old now. Heart condition. He cannot run forever. Kate felt the pieces clicking into place. You want to bring him back. Get him somewhere safe where he can testify. Henriksen met her eyes. Victor has evidence. Real evidence, not just testimony. Your father sent him copies of everything before the final mission. Financial records, photographs, recorded conversations. Enough to bury Hargrove if it ever sees daylight. But Victor will not hand it over to just anyone. He will only trust Thomas's family. Kate understood then why Henriksen had been waiting for her, why he had gathered this evidence but not acted on it. He needed someone Antonov would trust, someone with Morrison blood and Morrison integrity. You want me to go to Afghanistan, find Victor and bring him home? More than that. Henriksen's voice was steady, certain. I want you to finish what your father started. Clear his name. Bring Hargrove to justice. Show the world that Thomas Morrison was not just another casualty, but a hero who died fighting corruption. Kate thought of Rachel, 15 years old and already showing signs of the same darkness that had consumed Kate since their father's death. Thought of the ranch in Wyoming, where 3 generations of Morrisons had learned what honor meant. Thought of the dog tag around her neck and the promise she had made over a grave in Arlington. What do you need from me? Henriksen smiled, and for a moment Kate saw the young Marine from the photograph. The warrior who had fought alongside her father in the streets of Mogadishu. Training, preparation, and the willingness to do whatever it takes. The next morning, Kate called her command and requested emergency leave. Family emergency. They granted it without question. Her record was exemplary. She had earned the benefit of the doubt. She did not tell Rachel the truth. Could not bear to give her little sister hope that might turn to ash. Instead, she said she was helping Colonel Henriksen with some research about their father's service. Technical enough to be boring, vague enough to avoid questions. Rachel had looked at her with those 2 knowing eyes. Be careful, she had said. Whatever you are really doing. Kate had promised. Another promise she hoped she could keep. Henriksen's ranch became her world. She moved into the spare bedroom and began the most intensive training of her life. Not the physical preparation of sniper school. This was different. This was education in the darker arts of their profession. They started with the fundamentals. Not marksmanship, but mindset. Henriksen had her sit in the workshop for hours, just breathing, learning to quiet her mind, to separate emotion from execution, to find the stillness that made impossible shots possible. Your father was good because he could make his body disappear, Henriksen explained. When he looked through the scope, there was no Thomas Morrison. No memories, no fear, no doubt. Just the wind and the target and the space between. You have the skill, now you need the mind. Kate struggled with it at first. Every time she settled into stillness, her father's face appeared. The way he had looked the last time she saw him, walking into the Casper airport with that crooked smile. The way he must have looked in those final seconds, realizing someone he trusted had betrayed him. Henriksen was patient. He had been through this himself decades ago. Knew the demons that haunted anyone who lived by the rifle. One evening as they sat on his porch watching the sunset over the Rockies, he told her the secret. You cannot forget him. You cannot make the pain go away, but you can give it purpose. Every time you pull the trigger from here on, you do it for Thomas. Every shot is a prayer. Every hit is keeping his memory alive. The pain becomes fuel. The grief becomes focus. Kate thought about that, thought about turning her loss into something useful, something that might prevent other daughters from standing over graves too soon. Slowly, she began to find the stillness. They trained in the mornings before dawn, long shots across the valley, distances that made even military standards seem conservative. Henriksen had set up steel targets at 1,000 yards, 1,500, 2,000. Distances where the bullet flight time was long enough to second-guess everything. Kate learned to read the wind not from instruments, but from the way grass bent in the distance, from the way heat's shimmer distorted her view, from the feel of air moving across her skin. Learned to judge distance by the clarity of details, the way light played across terrain, the subtle shifts in color that told her about atmosphere and temperature. But the hardest lessons were not technical, they were moral. One afternoon, Henriksen set up a scenario, a hostage situation. Through the scope, Kate could see a mannequin dressed as a civilian, positioned close to a target silhouette. The shot was makeable, but there was risk. A gust of wind at the wrong moment, and she might hit the hostage. Take the shot, Henriksen ordered. Kate hesitated. The wind was variable. She could not guarantee safety. In the field, you will not have perfect conditions. You will have a Marine's life depending on your ability to make this decision. Take the shot or call it off, but decide now. Kate studied the scenario, calculated odds, felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Finally, she lowered the rifle. No shot. Risk is too high. Henriksen nodded. Good, now watch. He picked up his own rifle, settled into position, and fired in one smooth motion. The target's silhouette dropped, the hostage mannequin untouched. Kate stared. How did you know? Because I have made that shot before. Because I know what I am capable of. But more important, I know what I am not capable of. You made the right call. Better to not shoot than to shoot and miss. That lesson might save lives someday. It was a pattern that repeated through her training. Henriksen constantly putting her in impossible situations, forcing her to make choices without enough information, without enough time. Teaching her that combat was not about perfect conditions, but about making the best decision possible with what you had. 3 weeks into training, a package arrived. No return address, postmarked from Pakistan. Inside was a burner phone and a handwritten note. For the daughter of my brother. Call when ready. The number was unsigned, but Kate knew who it was from. That evening, she activated the phone and dialed. The connection was terrible, crackling with static and delay. When a voice finally answered, it was heavily accented but clear. Is this Katie Morrison? Kate's breath caught. Her father used to call her Katie. Nobody else did. This is Kate Morrison. Who is this? You know who I am. I am the man who fought beside your father in Mogadishu. The man who watched him die in Afghanistan because I was not there to protect him. I am Viktor Antonov. The Russian's voice was rough, strained. Kate could hear exhaustion in every syllable. Colonel Henriksen said you have evidence. Evidence that could prove who killed my father. I have more than evidence. I have truth. Your father was murdered because he was good man in world of bad men. He would not stay quiet when he should have stayed quiet. He would not look away when looking away would have kept him alive. And for that, they killed him. Kate gripped the phone. Who killed him? I need a name. Antonov was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. The man who gave order was General William Hargrove. But the man who pulled trigger, I do not know. Hargrove has many people loyal to him, people who do his killing and keep his secrets. Tell me how to find you. I will come to Afghanistan. I will bring you home. The Russian laughed, but it was a bitter sound. Home, I have no home anymore. But yes, I will let you come. Not because I trust you, but because I owe your father. He saved my life 3 times. I could not save his. This is the only thing I can give him now. Antonov gave her coordinates, a village in Helmand province, deep in Taliban territory, the same province where Thomas Morrison had died. When you come, bring Henriksen. I will only show myself for ghost. Anyone else, I will assume as trap. The line went dead. Kate looked at Henriksen, who had been listening. The old Marine's face was grim. Helmand province. That is as bad as it gets right now. Taliban controls most of the territory. No American forces within 50 miles. We go in there, we are on our own. Kate felt her pulse quicken. How do we get there? Henriksen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Carefully, and with a very good plan. Over the next 2 weeks, they built that plan, studied satellite imagery of the target area, identified routes in and out, calculated worst-case scenarios. Henriksen had contacts from his years in special operations, people who owed him favors. He called them in. A cargo pilot who did not ask questions agreed to drop them near the Pakistan border. A smuggler Henriksen had worked with years ago would provide transportation across country. Local fixers would help them blend in, moving through Taliban checkpoints with forged documents and careful bribes. It was a suicide mission dressed up in operational language. They both knew it, but neither spoke the words aloud. Kate spent her evenings video calling Rachel. Her sister was doing well in school, still shooting every day, still growing into the woman their father had hoped she would become. Kate memorized her face, her voice, the way she laughed, stored them away like precious things that might need to sustain her through darkness. On one call, Rachel asked the question Kate had been dreading. When are you coming home? Soon, maybe a month. Rachel was quiet, then softly, you are going somewhere dangerous, are you not? Kate wanted to lie, but she had never lied to Rachel. I am going somewhere that might help us understand what happened to Dad. Rachel's eyes filled with tears, but she did not cry. Kate, we already lost Dad. I cannot lose you too. You will not lose me, I promise. Another promise. Kate was collecting them like debts that would someday come due. A week before departure, Henriksen introduced Kate to the final member of their team. Sergeant Danny Cross walked into the workshop like he owned it, all swagger and easy confidence. He was 29 Army Rangers, with the kind of face that belonged in recruiting posters. But his eyes were older than his years, marked by things he had seen and could not unsee. Kate eyed him skeptically. I thought this was just us two. Henriksen shook his head. We need a spotter, someone who knows the language, knows the culture. Danny has done 4 tours in Afghanistan. He speaks Pashto like a native, and he owes me. Danny grinned. Saved my life in Kandahar, pulled me out of a burning vehicle while taking fire. So yeah, I owe him. Plus, this sounds like the kind of stupid that makes for great stories if we survive. Kate did not smile. This is not about stories. This is about justice for my father. Danny's expression sobered immediately. I know. Henriksen told me everything. Your father sounds like he was a good man, the kind we need more of. I am honored to help. They spent 3 days working together. Danny was good, Kate had to admit. Fast, smart, with the kind of tactical awareness that kept people alive. He could read terrain, anticipate problems, adjust plans on the fly. And he had a sense of humor that somehow made the impossible seem merely improbable. On their last training day, they ran a full mission simulation, moving through rough terrain, setting up a hide site, coordinating long-range shots with Danny spotting and Kate shooting. They worked together like they had been doing it for years. Afterward, Danny approached Kate as she was cleaning her rifle. You know this might not work, right? Even if we get Antonov out, even if he has the evidence. Hargrove is powerful. He has friends in high places. Justice is not guaranteed. Kate looked at him. I know, but doing nothing guarantees he gets away with it. At least this way there is a chance. Danny nodded. Fair enough. Just wanted to make sure you were going in with eyes open. That night, Kate wrote letters. One to Rachel, explaining everything in case she did not come back. One to her commanding officer, laying out what she knew about Hargrove's crimes. One to Senator Richard Miller, the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, whose son had died in Mogadishu. Henriksen would mail them if Kate did not return. She reread her father's dog tag message one more time. Be strong for Rachel. Live the life I wanted. She was trying, Dad. She was trying. November 2019. They flew out on a moonless night, the cargo plane's engines drowning out conversation. Kate sat between Henriksen and Danny, her rifle case at her feet, going over the mission in her mind. Infiltrate through Pakistan, make contact with smugglers, cross into Afghanistan, reach the village where Antonov was hiding, extract him, get to the exfil point, survive. Simple on paper, nearly impossible in execution. Henriksen seemed calm, almost peaceful. He had done missions like this before, back when he was young and believed himself invincible. Now he was 58, carrying old wounds and older regrets, but his hands were steady, his eyes clear. Danny was fidgeting, checking his gear compulsively, not from fear, but from energy. He was the kind of soldier who needed movement, action. The waiting was harder for him than the fighting. Kate was somewhere between them, nervous but focused, scared but determined. She thought of her father making the same journey 2 years earlier, thought of him sitting in a helicopter or transport, knowing he was flying toward his death, but going anyway because Marines did not abandon their own. She understood him now in a way she never had before, understood why he had said yes to Henriksen's request, why he had broken his promise to Kate. Some debts could only be paid in person. Some responsibilities could not be delegated. The plane landed in darkness on a dirt strip that did not officially exist. They grabbed their gear and moved quickly into the night. By the time the plane's engines faded into the distance, they were already a mile away, moving toward the border. The smuggler was waiting where Henriksen's contact had promised, an old man with a weathered face and calculating eyes. He looked at them, looked at their weapons, and named a price. Henriksen paid in American cash, crisp bills that disappeared into the old man's robes. The journey took 3 days, riding in the back of trucks covered with tarps, walking through mountain passes in the dark, hiding during daylight hours. They passed through checkpoints where border guards looked the other way for the right price, crossed into Afghanistan as the sun rose over mountains that had seen too many wars. The landscape was harsh and beautiful in equal measure. Barren slopes rising towards snow-capped peaks, valleys where ancient rivers had carved paths through stone, villages that clung to hillsides like they had grown there, mud brick and determination. Kate saw poverty that shocked her. Children with hollow eyes, women carrying water from wells that might be contaminated, old men sitting in doorways, watching the world with the patience of those who had survived decades of conflict. This was the country her father had tried to help. These were the people he had wanted to protect. She understood better now why he had kept coming back, deployment after deployment. How could you see this suffering and just walk away? On the third night, they reached the village. It was small, maybe 50 families, clustered around a central mosque. Their guide led them to a house on the outskirts. Inside, past curtains and through a back room, there was a narrow staircase leading down. In the basement, lit by a single kerosene lamp, sat Viktor Antonov. He looked nothing like the powerful warrior in the photograph. 62 years old and ravaged by illness, he was gaunt, his face hollowed out by pain and time. But his eyes were still sharp, still held that intensity Kate had seen in the picture. Henriksen entered first. The two old warriors looked at each other for a long moment. Then Antonov stood slowly and they embraced like the brothers they were. "Ghost," Antonov said, "it has been too long." "Shadow." Henriksen's voice was rough with emotion. "You look terrible." Antonov laughed, a wheezing sound that turned into a cough. "You look old. We are both falling apart." Then Antonov turned his gaze to Kate. She felt the weight of his scrutiny, the way he studied her face like he was looking for someone else in her features. "You are Thomas's daughter. You have his eyes, the same stubbornness." Kate stepped forward. "My father spoke of you. In his notes, in the things he left behind. He considered you a brother." Antonov's expression softened. "He was best man I ever knew. We fought together. We should have died together. Instead, I lived and he died alone because I was coward who ran." "You were not a coward." Kate's voice was firm. "You survived. You kept the evidence safe. You are here now to help us finish what he started." The Russian was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small package wrapped in oilcloth. Inside was a USB drive, sealed in waterproof plastic. "Everything is here. Financial records going back to 1993. Photographs of Hargrove with Somali warlords. Audio recordings of conversations. Your father and I spent 20 years gathering this. Every time Hargrove made a deal, took a bribe, sold out his own people, we documented it." "Why did you not use it before?" "Because we were afraid." Antonov's honesty was brutal. "Afraid for our families. Afraid of what Hargrove might do. Your father wanted to act in 2016, but I counseled patience. Said we should wait for right moment. And while we waited, Hargrove killed him." The old Russian's voice broke. "I will carry that guilt until I die. If I had been brave 2 years ago, Thomas would still be alive." Henriksen put a hand on his shoulder. "We were all afraid. We all share the blame. But now we have a chance to make it right." They spent the next hour planning their extraction. The road out would be different from the route in. Hargrove's people might be watching the village. They needed to move fast. Stay unpredictable. Antonov was weak. His heart condition made exertion dangerous. They would need to carry him for parts of the journey. Danny scouted the perimeter while Kate and Henriksen studied maps, plotting waypoints and contingencies. At midnight, they prepared to move. Antonov struggled into warm clothes, his movements slow and painful. Kate watched him and saw what her father might have become if he had lived to 62, worn down by years in war, but still stubborn, still fighting. As they prepared to leave, Antonov called Kate aside. "There is something you should know about how your father died." Kate's breath caught. "What?" "Henriksen does not know all of it. I was on satellite phone with Thomas that day, minutes before he was killed. He told me he had found proof of Hargrove's latest scheme, weapons shipments to Taliban. Thomas was going to expose everything. He said after the mission was over, he was done being silent." Kate felt tears burning. "He was going to stop Hargrove. That is why he was killed." Antonov nodded. "In his last words to me, he said, 'Tell Katie I am sorry I broke my promise. But some promises are worth breaking if it saves lives.' He knew the risk. He chose to take it anyway." Kate's chest felt tight. "Did he say anything else?" Antonov smiled sadly. He said, "Tell Katie to live. Not just exist, but live. Find joy. Love someone. Have children. Do not let my death make her hard." That was what he wanted for you, not revenge, but life. The words hit Kate like a physical blow. Here she was in Afghanistan, hunting the men who killed her father. Was this what Thomas Morrison would have wanted? Or was she using his memory to justify her own need for vengeance? She did not have time to answer. Danny appeared in the doorway, his face tense. "We have a problem. There are trucks approaching. Armed men. I think Hargrove's people found us." The training was over. The mission had begun. And somewhere in the darkness outside, enemies were coming who would do anything to stop them from leaving this village alive. Kate checked her rifle one final time, felt the weight of her father's dog tag against her chest, thought of Rachel safe in Wyoming, waiting for a sister who might never come home. Then she pushed the thoughts aside and became what Henriksen had trained her to be. A weapon, a guardian, a Marine who would do whatever it took to complete the mission and protect her brothers. The night exploded into chaos, and Kate Morrison stepped into the fire, ready to prove herself worthy of the legacy her father had left behind. The basement went dark as Danny killed the lamp. 4 people frozen in blackness, listening to the sound of truck engines growing louder. Kate's night vision adjusted slowly, shapes emerging from shadow. Henriksen moving to the stairs, Danny checking his rifle. Viktor Antonov breathing heavily, each inhale a struggle against the failing heart in his chest. Kate positioned herself at the base of the stairs, rifle ready. Through the floorboards above came the sound of footsteps. Heavy boots on packed earth, men spreading out, surrounding the house. Professional, organized. These were not Taliban fighters looking for strangers. These were hunters who knew exactly what they were looking for. Henriksen descended the stairs, his face grim in the darkness. At least 8 hostiles, maybe more. They are setting up a perimeter. This is not a random patrol. Kate felt her pulse steady, the training taking over. How long until they breach? Minutes. They will check the main floor first, then work down. We need to move now. Danny was already helping Antonov to his feet. The old Russian moved like his bones hurt, but his eyes were alert, focused. He had been in situations like this before, knew the drill. "There is a tunnel," Antonov whispered. "Old Soviet era, built during their war here. Goes under 3 houses, comes up in a shed near the village edge." "Why did you not mention this before?" "Because if I told you and you were captured, you would tell them. Now you know because we need it." They moved through the basement, Antonov leading despite his weakness. At the back wall was what looked like a pile of storage crates. Danny and Henriksen shifted them aside, revealing a wooden door set into the floor. The hinges protested as they lifted it, a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the confined space. Above them, boots hammered on the front door, voices shouting in English with American accents. "Open up! We know you are in there. This does not have to go bad." Kate was the last down, pulling the door closed above her head as the basement door upstairs splintered open. She heard the crash of boots on stairs, shouts of clear and moving. Then she was in the tunnel, and everything became compressed darkness and the smell of damp earth. The tunnel was barely 4 feet high, forcing them to move in a crouch. Viktor led, one hand on the wall, moving by memory and touch. Danny followed close behind, helping support the old man when he stumbled. Henriksen came next, and Kate brought up the rear, rifle ready, listening for sounds of pursuit. The tunnel seemed to go on forever. Kate's back screamed from the awkward position. Her breathing sounded too loud in the enclosed space. Behind them, she could hear muffled shouts as the hunters discovered the tunnel entrance. "They are in," Henriksen said quietly. "Move faster." Victor was struggling. His breathing had become ragged, labored. Each step seemed to take more effort than the last. Danny practically carried him, the younger man's strength compensating for the old warrior's failing body. The tunnel branched. Victor chose left without hesitation. They stumbled forward through absolute darkness until Kate's head cracked against something solid. She bit back a cry. Her hand found wooden stairs leading upward. They emerged in a shed that smelled of animals and old hay. Through gaps in the wall, Kate could see the village. Lights moving, flashlights sweeping the darkness. The hunters were methodical, checking every building, every alley. "We need a vehicle," Danny said. "No way Antonov can walk out of here." Henriksen shook his head. "Every vehicle in the village is being watched. They locked this place down the moment they arrived." Kate studied the terrain through the shed wall. The village sat in a small valley surrounded by hills on three sides. The only road out led directly through the center, past where the trucks had parked. But the hills offered another option. Harder, slower, but possible. "We go over the hills, North Ridge. It is steep, but there is cover. Once we are over, we can move toward the border." Victor coughed, a wet sound that spoke of fluid in his lungs. "I cannot climb. My heart will not take it." "Then we carry you," Kate said flatly. "We are not leaving you." The old Russian smiled in the darkness. "Your father said same thing to me in Mogadishu, when I was pinned down, when I told him to go. He said Marines do not leave anyone behind, even stubborn Russians who should know better." Henriksen checked his watch. "We have maybe 10 minutes before they sweep this section. We need to move now." They exited the shed one at a time, moving quickly across open ground to the shelter of a wall. Kate led now, using the night vision scope on her rifle to scan for threats. The hunters were concentrating on the center of the village, working building to building. They had not yet expanded to the perimeter. The group moved in silence, using every scrap of cover. Behind one house, through a goat pen where the animals bleated softly at their passage, along a dry creek bed that led toward the base of the North Ridge. They were 50 yards from the village edge when a spotlight swung across the terrain, searching. Kate froze, pressing against a mud wall. The light passed over them, moved on, then swung back. For a terrible moment, she thought they had been spotted. Then the light moved away again, continuing its methodical sweep. "Now," Henriksen breathed. They broke cover and ran for the ridge. Danny had Victor over his shoulder in a fireman's carry, the old man's weight slowing him down but not stopping him. Kate and Henriksen flanked them, weapons ready, scanning for threats. Behind them, a shout went up. They had been spotted. The spotlight swung back, caught them in its glare. Rifles opened up, muzzle flashes bright in the darkness. Rounds cracked past, striking dirt and rock. The group hit the slope and started climbing. The terrain was steep, loose shale sliding under their boots. Victor groaned with each jarring step. Danny's breathing was labored but steady. They climbed through a hail of fire, bullets whining off rocks around them. Kate turned, dropped to one knee, and returned fire. She was not trying to hit anyone, just force the hunters to take cover, buy seconds for her group to gain distance. She fired 3 controlled shots, saw men diving behind vehicles. Then she was up and climbing again. The slope seemed endless. Kate's legs burned. Her lungs screamed for air in the thin mountain atmosphere. She could hear Danny struggling ahead, hear Victor's gasping breaths, but they kept climbing because stopping meant dying. They crested the ridge just as a rocket-propelled grenade struck the slope behind them. The explosion threw dirt and rock into the air, the shockwave pummeling Kate's back. She stumbled, caught herself, kept moving. Behind them, the hunters were climbing now, following them up the ridge. The far side of the ridge was even steeper, a near vertical drop into darkness. Henriksen did not hesitate. He started down, half climbing and half sliding. Danny followed, still carrying Victor. Kate came last, moving backward, covering their descent. She could see flashlights at the ridgeline now. The hunters were close. Too close. She needed to slow them down, buy time. She found a position behind a boulder and settled her rifle, eye to scope. The night vision turned darkness into green clarity. She could see the hunters clearly now. 8 men in tactical gear, military-grade equipment. They moved with practiced efficiency, covering each other as they advanced. These were professionals, special operations, probably JSOC, sent by Hargrove to clean up his mess. Kate found her calm center, the place Henriksen had taught her to access, the place where fear and doubt did not exist, where there was only the wind and the target and the mathematics of death. She picked the lead man, a tall figure moving with command authority. The team leader. Range was 300 yards, downhill, moderate wind from the left. She adjusted for all of it in the space of a breath. The rifle fired. Through the scope, she saw the man drop, grabbing his leg. Not a kill shot. Kate was not trying to kill. She was sending a message. I can see you, I can hit you, be careful. The hunters scattered, taking cover. Their advance stopped. Kate used the moment to move, sliding down the slope to where Henriksen and Danny waited. That bought us 5 minutes, Henriksen said. Maybe less. They will flank or call for air support. How far to the border? 20 miles, most of it open terrain. Kate looked at Victor. The old Russian was barely conscious, his face gray in the dim light. His breathing sounded like wind through broken glass. Every mile they carried him might be his last. Danny voiced what they were all thinking. He is not going to make it. His heart cannot take this. Then we make a stand here, Kate said. Hold them off while you get Victor out. Henriksen shook his head. That is suicide. 1 rifle against 8 operators with air support on call. Kate met his eyes. You said it yourself. We cannot outrun them. Not with Victor. Someone has to slow them down. That someone is me. No, Antonov rasped. The old man pushed himself upright, strength coming from somewhere deep. You do not sacrifice for me. I am old man, already dying. You have life ahead. Which is why it has to be me, Kate insisted. I am the youngest, the strongest. I have the best chance of holding them long enough for you to escape. Henriksen's face was anguished. Your father would never forgive me. My father would understand. This is what Marines do. We hold the line so others can live. The old colonel was silent for a long moment. Then he pulled something from his jacket, a dog tag on a worn chain. His own tag, the one he had worn through decades of service. When you get out, tell them the truth. Tell them what Hargrove did. Make sure Thomas's death meant something. When I get out, Kate corrected, I am not planning to die here. She took the dog tag, added it to the one she already wore. Her father's and Henriksen's together. The weight of 2 legacies resting against her heart. Danny pulled her aside while Henriksen helped Victor prepare to move. The younger man's usual humor was gone, replaced by something harder. I will come back for you, soon as we get Victor to safety. I will come back with support. Kate nodded, not trusting her voice. Danny gripped her shoulder. You are one crazy Marine. Your dad would be proud. Then he was gone, helping Henriksen carry Victor into the darkness. Kate watched until they disappeared, 3 shadows moving across barren terrain. She was alone now. 1 rifle, 100 rounds, against 8 hunters who wanted her dead. She found a position with good fields of fire and settled in. The rock formation gave her cover and elevation. She could see the ridge where the hunters would have to cross, could see the approaches they might use. It was not perfect, but it would do. The waiting was always the hardest part. Henriksen had taught her that. The moments between spotting the target and pulling the trigger, when doubt could creep in, when you had time to think about what you were about to do and why. Kate used the time to think about her father, about Thomas Morrison kneeling in similar terrain 2 years ago, in his final moments. Had he known what was coming? Had he seen the betrayal in time to understand? Or had death come as a surprise, quick and brutal and unfair? She thought about Rachel, safe in Wyoming, 15 years old and already carrying too much grief. What would losing Kate do to her? Would she grow hard and cold, another Morrison woman shaped by loss? Or would she remember what their father had taught them about resilience and joy and the importance of living fully even in the shadow of death? Kate thought about the choices that had brought her here. The decision to join the Marines, the decision to become a sniper, the decision to follow Henriksen into Afghanistan, hunting ghosts and justice. Each choice had seemed inevitable at the time, but maybe there had been other paths. Maybe she could have honored her father's memory without becoming what he was. Too late for regrets now. She had made her choices. Now she had to live with them, or die with them. Movement on the ridge pulled her from thought. The hunters were advancing again, moving in 2 teams, 4 men visible, the others concealed. Smart, professional. They knew they were facing a skilled shooter. They were not taking chances. Kate watched them come, Let them close the distance. At 500 yards, she took her first shot, aimed for equipment, not flesh. The round struck a radio pack, destroying it in a shower of sparks. The man wearing it dove for cover, unhurt but cut off from communications. The hunters returned fire, but they were shooting blind. They could not see her position clearly. Kate used their confusion to move, sliding to a secondary position 30 yards away. She fired twice more, both shots striking close to targets, forcing the men to keep their heads down. This was not about killing. It was about time. Every minute she kept them pinned was another minute for Henriksen and Danny to get Victor farther away. Every round she forced them to avoid was another small victory. But Kate knew the math, 8 against 1. Eventually they would flank her, surround her, close the trap. She could delay that moment, but not prevent it, unless she did something unexpected. She waited until the hunters committed to their advance, 4 men moving toward her position while the others provided covering fire. Then she did the last thing they would expect. She attacked. Kate left her covered position and moved toward them, using terrain for concealment, closing the distance instead of maintaining it. She was 50 yards from the nearest hunter before he realized she was no longer where he thought she was. She fired from point-blank range, striking him in the body armor. The impact knocked him down, stunned but alive. Kate was already moving, using his position as temporary cover. She fired twice more, both rounds striking gear and equipment, disabling without killing. The other hunters were shouting, trying to reorient, but Kate had created chaos. She was inside their perimeter now, too close for them to fire without risking each other. She used the confusion to move again, ghosting through the darkness like the specter Henriksen's call sign promised. She made it back to higher ground before they could regroup. From her new position, she could see them clearly. 7 men still mobile, 1 down from her charge. They were angry now, frustrated. She had made them look foolish. A voice called out in English, amplified by a megaphone. "Morrison, we know who you are. We know what you are trying to do. Surrender now and you will get a fair trial. Keep fighting and you die here." Kate said nothing. Let her silence be the answer. The voice tried again. "Your father would not want this. Thomas Morrison was a good Marine. He would not want his daughter to die in a foreign land for nothing." Kate felt rage flare hot in her chest. They were using her father against her, using his memory as a weapon. She wanted to scream back that they were the ones who had killed him, that Hargrove had murdered a good man and sent these hunters to finish the job. But she stayed silent. Let them wonder. Let them worry about what she might do next. The hunters' advance resumed. More careful now, more methodical. They had learned to respect her. That was good. Respect meant caution. Caution meant time. Caution. Kate moved again, relocating before they could zero in on her position. She was running low on ammunition. 40 rounds left. She had to make each one count. She settled into a new hide site and forced herself to slow down, to breathe, to find the calm center again. Henriksen's lessons came back. You cannot outgun them, so you outthink them, make them react to you instead of you reacting to them. Kate studied the terrain with fresh eyes. There was a natural choke point about 200 yards ahead, where the hunters would have to cross open ground. If she could get there first, take up a position with good cover, she could hold them for hours. She moved quickly but carefully, using every scrap of concealment. The hunters were still focused on her old position, not realizing she had relocated again. By the time they figured it out, Kate was dug in at the choke point, rifle rested on solid rock, commanding the approach. Now the fight changed. The hunters could not advance without exposing themselves. Kate proved it by placing a round 3 inches from the lead man's foot. He jerked back, swearing. Message received. This ground belongs to me. Cross it and die. Time stretched. Minutes became an hour. Kate held her position, conserving ammunition, taking only shots that mattered. The hunters tried to flank, but the terrain worked against them. Any route around her position would take them miles out of their way. Finally, one of them tried to cross. He moved fast, using smoke grenades for concealment. But Kate knew the wind, knew how smoke would drift. She fired twice, both rounds passing through gaps in the smoke. She heard a cry of pain. The man made it to cover, but he was hurt, bleeding, out of the fight. 6 left, and Kate had 27 rounds. The sky was beginning to lighten in the east. Dawn coming. That changed everything. In daylight, the hunters could see her position clearly. could call in air support, her advantage would evaporate. But dawn also meant Henriksen and Danny had been running for hours, meant they were close to the border, close to safety. Kate just had to hold a little longer. The hunters knew it too. They were getting desperate, trying different approaches. Two men attempted to suppress her with heavy fire while the others moved. Kate stayed low, letting the rounds spark off rock around her. When the firing paused, she popped up and hit one of the advancing men in the leg. He went down hard. 5 mobile hunters left, 19 rounds. The voice on the megaphone called out again. Last chance, Morrison. We have air support inbound. Fast movers with precision munitions. You cannot fight that. Surrender now while you still can. Kate looked at the lightning sky, thought about fighter jets screaming in, bombs falling, the mountain ridge turning into an inferno. Thought about dying alone in Afghanistan like her father had. About Rachel getting another flag, another notification. Then she thought about Henriksen and Danny and Viktor Antonov. About the evidence on that USB drive. About bringing Hargrove to justice. About making her father's death mean something. She checked her remaining ammunition. 19 rounds, enough. Kate stayed in position, stayed ready. If they were going to kill her, they would have to work for it. And she would make sure it cost them. The sound of rotor blades came from the south. A helicopter, flying fast and low. Kate's stomach tightened. This was it, the end of the line. No way to fight a helicopter gunship with a rifle. But as the helicopter crested the ridge, Kate saw something that made her heart leap. It was not a gunship. It was a cargo helicopter. And it was landing. The rear ramp dropped even as the wheels touched ground. Marines poured out, a full squad in combat gear. They took up positions with practiced efficiency, rifles trained on the hunters. A figure emerged from the helicopter, tall and commanding. Kate recognized the rank insignia of a full colonel. He raised a megaphone. This is Colonel Marcus Kane, JSOC. All personnel stand down immediately. This operation is terminated by order of the Joint Chiefs. Anyone who fires another shot will be arrested for conduct prejudicial to good order. The hunters hesitated, caught between their orders from Hargrove and direct orders from a superior officer backed by a squad of Marines. Colonel Kane continued, General Hargrove is under investigation for crimes including murder, treason, and corruption. His authority is suspended. Morrison, if you can hear me, you are ordered to stand down and report for debriefing. Kate rose slowly from her position, rifle lowered but ready. She did not trust this, did not trust that salvation could arrive so perfectly timed. But as she approached the helicopter, she saw Henriksen and Danny standing at the ramp. Viktor Antonov was on a stretcher, medics working on him, all 3 alive, all 3 safe. Henriksen looked at her with profound relief. We made it to the border, called in every favor I had. Colonel Kane here owed me from Iraq. He pulled strings, got authorization, came himself to extract us. Kate wanted to collapse, wanted to cry or scream or both. Instead, she nodded, keeping her composure. The mission was not over. Not until they were out of Afghanistan. Not until Victor's evidence was in the right hands. Not until Hargrove faced justice. Colonel Kane approached her. Staff Sergeant Morrison, I have heard a lot about you in the past few hours. Your father would be proud. Kate met his eyes. I am not done yet, sir. Hargrove needs to answer for what he did. Kane nodded, and he will. The investigation is already underway. Senator Miller is personally overseeing it. But right now, we need to get you out of here before the diplomatic situation gets worse. The hunters were being disarmed, their weapons confiscated. They looked angry, but impotent. Without Hargrove's authority backing them, they were just soldiers following illegal orders. They would face their own reckonings. Kate climbed into the helicopter, sat down beside Viktor. The old Russian opened his eyes, managed a weak smile. You held them, just like your father would have. I learned from the best. Viktor coughed, grimacing with pain. The evidence. You must get it to people who will use it. Do not trust military chain of command. Too many of Hargrove's people embedded. Who then? Senator Miller. He is clean. Lost his own son because of Hargrove. He will see justice done. Kate nodded. She pulled out the USB drive Viktor had given her, sealed it in a waterproof bag, and secured it in her vest. This tiny piece of technology held 26 years of evidence, proof of crimes that had cost dozens of lives. It felt heavier than it should. The helicopter lifted off as dawn broke fully over the Afghan mountains. Kate looked out the open ramp at the terrain falling away below. This was the last time she would see this country, the place where her father had died, the place where she had almost died. But she was leaving with more than she came with. She was leaving with answers, with evidence, with the means to bring a traitor to justice. Henriksen sat down beside her. "You did good back there, held them off long enough for us to get clear." That took courage. Or stupidity. The old Marine smiled. "Often the same thing. Your father used to say the line between courage and stupidity was whether you survived. Since you are here, we call it courage." Kate thought about that. Thought about all the moments over the past hours when survival had seemed impossible. All the choices that might have gone differently. All the ways she could have died on that ridgeline. But she had not died. She had survived. And now she had a chance to finish what her father started. The helicopter banked south, heading toward Pakistan in friendly airspace. Kate closed her eyes, let exhaustion wash over her. She was safe now. They all were. The hard part was over. Except it was not over. Not really. Bringing Hargrove to justice would be its own battle. One fought in courtrooms and congressional hearings instead of Afghan mountains. One where the weapons were words and evidence instead of rifles. But Kate was ready for that fight too. She had trained for it, had prepared for it, and she had something Hargrove did not expect. She had the truth. And she had the stubborn determination of a Morrison who refused to let injustice stand. She thought of Rachel back in Wyoming. Soon Kate would be able to call her, tell her that the mission was successful, that the men who killed their father would face justice, that Thomas Morrison's name would be cleared. She thought of her father buried in Arlington. Soon she would visit that grave again. But this time she would not come with questions and guilt. She would come with answers, with proof that Thomas Morrison had died a hero, fighting corruption and greed. The helicopter crossed into Pakistani airspace. They were out of Afghanistan, safe. Kate allowed herself a moment of relief, just a moment. Then she started planning the next phase. Because this was not about revenge. It had never been about revenge. It was about justice, about truth, about making sure good men like Thomas Morrison were remembered for what they really were, not the lies their killers told about them. And Kate Morrison was not done fighting, not by a long shot. The war against William Hargrove was just beginning, and she intended to win it no matter what it cost. The helicopter flew on through the morning light, carrying its cargo of battered warriors toward home. Behind them, the Afghan mountains receded into distance, their secrets and their dead remaining as they always had. But some secrets would not stay buried. Some dead would not stay silent. And somewhere in Washington, D.C., a general was about to learn that killing Thomas Morrison had been the worst mistake of his life, because he had left the man's daughter alive, and she was coming for him with the patience of a sniper and the determination of a Marine who would never, ever quit. The safe house in Northern Virginia smelled of coffee and old carpet. Kate Morrison sat at a scarred wooden table, the USB drive in front of her like a ticking bomb. 3 weeks had passed since Afghanistan. 3 weeks of debriefings and medical checks and lawyers asking the same questions in different ways. 3 weeks of waiting while the machinery of justice ground slowly forward. Across from her sat Senator Richard Miller, 68 years old with silver hair and the kind of face that had seen too much disappointment. He held a photograph, fingers trembling slightly. The image showed a young Marine in dress blues, Private James Miller, dead at 19 in the streets of Mogadishu because a captain wanted to get rich. "Your father tried to save my son," the senator said quietly. Thomas Morrison and Colonel Henriksen. They tried to warn command that the operation was compromised. Nobody listened. Kate had heard the story now from multiple sources. How her father and Henriksen had discovered Hargrove's treachery days before the Black Hawk Down raid. How they had tried to stop it. How they had been ignored by commanders who thought 2 NCOs were being paranoid. 18 men died that day, Miller continued. My son was one of them. For 26 years, I believed he died serving his country. Now I learn he died because a traitor sold us out. The senator's voice was steady, but his eyes were wet. Kate understood that pain. She had lived with it since the day MPS knocked on the ranch door in Wyoming. What can you do with this? Kate gestured to the USB drive. Hargrove has powerful friends, people who will protect him. Miller's expression hardened. I chair the Armed Services Committee. I have subpoena power. I can compel testimony, demand documents, investigate every transaction Hargrove has made for 30 years. But I need that evidence to be airtight. I need to know what is on that drive. They had not opened it yet, not officially. The drive was evidence in a potential criminal case. Chain of custody had to be maintained. But Miller had the authority to access it under congressional oversight. The senator inserted the drive into a laptop that had been swept for bugs and disconnected from any network. The screen came to life with folder after folder of documents, financial records, photographs, audio files, video recordings. 26 years of Thomas Morrison and Victor Antonoff building a case against a traitor. Miller began opening files at random, bank statements showing transfers from numbered accounts, photos of Hargrove meeting with Somali warlords in 1993, more recent images from Afghanistan showing him with known Taliban financiers, audio recordings of phone conversations discussing weapon shipments and payoffs. The evidence was overwhelming, meticulous, damning. "This is enough," Miller said finally. "This is more than enough to bring charges. Treason, murder, conspiracy. Hargrove will spend the rest of his life in prison." Kate felt a weight lift from her chest. "Then why do you look worried?" "Because bringing charges is one thing. Making them stick is another. Hargrove has spent 3 decades building relationships. He has allies in the Pentagon, in the intelligence community, in Congress. The moment we move against him, those people will circle the wagons. What do you need from me? Your testimony. You are the daughter of one of his victims. You are a decorated Marine. You risked your life to bring this evidence home. A jury will listen to you in a way they might not listen to old bank records." Kate nodded slowly. "When?" Miller checked his watch. "The preliminary hearing is in 2 weeks, but there is something you need to know. Hargrove knows you are back. He knows you have the evidence, and he is not going to sit quietly while we build a case against him. What can he do? He is under investigation. His authority is suspended." The senator's smile was grim. "Never underestimate a cornered animal, especially one with Hargrove's resources and connections. Watch your back, Sergeant. Until he is in handcuffs, he is still dangerous." Kate left the meeting and drove to Walter Reed Medical Center, where Victor Antonoff was recovering. The old Russian had survived the extraction, but barely. His heart condition had worsened during the escape. Doctors said he had weeks at most, maybe days. She found him in a private room, hooked to monitors that beeped steadily. He looked smaller than he had in Afghanistan, diminished by illness and medication. But his eyes were still sharp when they focused on Kate. "Little Morrison," he said, his accent thick. "You look like you carry weight of world." Kate pulled up a chair. Senator Miller reviewed the evidence. "He says it is enough to convict Hargrove." Victor smiled weakly. "Your father would be happy. He spent so many years gathering this, waiting for right moment. Why did you help him? You could have gone back to Russia, stayed safe." The old man was quiet for a moment. "In Mogadishu, I was pinned down. 3 warlord fighters very close. I was out of ammunition, ready to die. Then I hear shooting. Thomas Morrison running across open ground under fire, killing all 3 men, saving me." Victor paused, his breathing labored. "Afterward, I ask him why. Why risk life for Russian you barely know? He says, because no man should die alone and afraid if I can prevent it. That is when I knew he was true brother." Kate felt tears burning, but did not let them fall. "He said the same thing about leaving Marines behind. Because for men like your father, it was not just words, it was who he was, deep in his soul. He could not be different, even when being different would keep him alive." The monitors beeped faster. Victor grimaced, touching his chest. "The nurse will come soon. Make me take more medicine. Make me sleep. But before that, I must tell you something." "What?" "The man who killed your father. I know his name." Kate froze. The room seemed to shrink around her. "What?" Victor reached for her hand with his own, cold and trembling. "Thomas called me that day, minutes before he died. He was worried. Said someone on the team was acting strange. Someone he should trust, but something felt wrong. He gave me a name just in case. I think that man is the one who shot him." "Who?" "Lieutenant Commander Eric Nash. Navy SEAL, he was part of Hargrove's protection detail in Afghanistan. Your father did not know he was Hargrove's man. By the time he suspected, it was too late." Kate felt rage and relief in equal measure. A name, finally a name. Where is Nash now? Victor's eyes were starting to close. "Senator Miller can find him. Tell the senator. Make sure Nash answers for what he did." The old Russian's grip weakened. Kate held his hand until the nurse arrived with the medications. As Victor drifted into sedated sleep, Kate whispered a promise. "I will make them all pay. Nash, Hargrove, Everyone who had a hand in killing my father. I swear it. She left the hospital and called Senator Miller, gave him Nash's name. The senator promised to have him located and subpoenaed to testify. If he refused or ran, it would be evidence of guilt. Kate drove back to the temporary housing the Marine Corps had provided while she was on administrative leave. The apartment was sterile and anonymous, perfect for someone passing through, someone who did not belong anywhere anymore. Rachel called that evening. Her sister's voice was bright and young and full of life. Kate tried to match her energy but felt the darkness underneath, the weight of what she knew and what she had done. "When are you coming home?" Rachel asked. "I miss you. Soon. Maybe another week or two. I have to testify at some hearings first." "About Dad?" Kate hesitated. "Yes. About Dad and the people who killed him." Rachel was quiet, then softly, "Are you okay? You sound different." Kate looked at her reflection in the apartment window. Hollow eyes, gaunt face. She had lost 15 pounds since Afghanistan. Sleep came in brief intervals between nightmares. "I am fine, just tired." Rachel did not believe her, but did not push. They talked about easier things. School, horses, the early snow in the Wyoming mountains. When they hung up, Kate felt more alone than ever. She spent the next week preparing for the hearing, reviewing documents, working with military lawyers who would present the case, learning the difference between combat operations and legal proceedings. Both were battles, but the weapons were different. Henriksen visited regularly. The old colonel had been staying with friends in D.C., helping coordinate the investigation. He looked older now, the stress carving deeper lines in his face, but his eyes held the same determination Kate remembered. "How are you holding up?" he asked one evening over bad takeout Chinese food. Kate shrugged. "I have been better. You?" Henriksen smiled grimly. "I have been worse. This is just another mission. Different terrain, but same objective. We adapt and overcome." "Do you think we can win? Really win?" The colonel set down his chopsticks. "Hargrove has committed serious crimes. The evidence is overwhelming. But he has also been a general for almost a decade. He knows how the system works. He will use every loophole, every procedural delay, every favor he has accumulated." Kate felt frustration building. "So what do? We do what Marines do. We hold the line. We do not quit. We keep fighting until either we win or there is nothing left to fight with." The night before the hearing, Kate could not sleep. She stood at the apartment window watching traffic move through the city. Somewhere out there, Hargrove was plotting his defense, planning how to destroy her credibility, preparing to paint her father as a liar or a fool, or worse. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, just 2 words. "Be careful." Kate deleted it and tried to dismiss it as a wrong number, but the warning stuck in her mind. Hargrove was dangerous, desperate. A man facing life in prison had nothing to lose. She checked the door locks, verified the windows were secure, placed her service pistol on the nightstand within easy reach. Then she lay in bed staring at the ceiling until dawn crept through the blinds. The preliminary hearing took place in a secured room at the Pentagon. Not a full trial yet, just a proceeding to determine if enough evidence existed to move forward with courts-martial charges. Kate arrived early, escorted by military police who had been assigned as protection detail. Senator Miller was already there reviewing notes with his staff. He looked up when Kate entered and nodded. Everything was ready. The evidence had been submitted under seal. Witnesses had been summoned. This was the first step toward justice. The hearing room filled slowly. Military lawyers, Pentagon officials, congressional observers. The atmosphere was tense, formal, heavy with unspoken implications. If Hargrove went down, how many others would fall with him? Then Hargrove himself arrived. Kate had seen photographs, but they had not prepared her for the reality. General William Hargrove was a commanding presence even in disgrace. 65 years old, but still powerfully built, his uniform immaculate, 4 stars gleaming on his shoulders. He walked like a man who owned the room, like a man who had never lost a battle and did not intend to start now. His eyes found Kate across the room, held her gaze. She saw calculation there, assessment. He was measuring her, looking for weakness. Kate stared back without flinching. She had held off 8 special operators in the Afghan mountains. One general's intimidation tactics did not scare her. The presiding officer called the hearing to order, a colonel judge advocate who looked uncomfortable with the proceedings. This was not a normal case. The accused was one of the highest-ranking officers in the military. The charges included treason. The political implications were staggering. Senator Miller stood to present the opening argument. He spoke clearly and without emotion, laying out the case methodically. The evidence from Mogadishu, the financial records, the pattern of corruption spanning 3 decades, Thomas Morrison's murder, the attempted cover-up. As Miller spoke, Kate watched Hargrove. The general sat perfectly still, his face a mask of professional courtesy. Occasionally he would lean over to whisper to his lawyer, but mostly he just listened, giving nothing away. Then it was the defense's turn. Hargrove's lawyer was a civilian, expensive suit, and shark's eyes. He immediately went on the attack. The evidence was fabricated. Thomas Morrison had been a decorated Marine, but also a man with known grudges against superior officers. The financial records were circumstantial. The photographs could be doctored. Viktor Antonov was a foreign national with questionable credibility. The lawyer saved his real venom for Kate. She was a troubled service member who had gone AWOL, collaborated with foreign operatives, violated numerous military regulations. Her testimony was compromised by grief and a desire for revenge. She was not a credible witness. Kate felt the words like physical blows. They were trying to destroy her before she even testified, trying to poison the well, make her look unstable, unreliable, motivated by emotion rather than truth. Senator Miller objected, argued that Kate's service record spoke for itself, that she had risked her life to bring evidence of treason to light, that attacking her character was a desperate move by a defense that had no legitimate rebuttal to the facts. The judge advocate allowed both sides to make their cases. Then he called for the first witness. Colonel James Henriksen took the stand. He recounted his service with Thomas Morrison, their time in Mogadishu, the discovery of Hargrove's treachery, the threats that had silenced them. His voice was steady, factual, devastating. Hargrove's lawyer tried to break him on cross-examination, suggested Henriksen was bitter about his own forced retirement, implied he was coaching Kate's testimony. Henriksen deflected every attack with the calm of a man who had been through worse interrogations. Next came the documentary evidence. Financial experts who had analyzed the offshore accounts. Forensic specialists who had authenticated the photographs and audio recordings. Intelligence analysts who confirmed the identities of Hargrove's contacts. Each witness added another brick to the wall of evidence. By the time they broke for lunch, the case against Hargrove looked solid, but Kate knew this was just the beginning. The real battle would come when she took the stand, when Hargrove's lawyer could question her directly, try to break her credibility in front of everyone who mattered. She ate lunch alone in a small room designated for witnesses, could not keep food down. Her stomach was a knot of tension and adrenaline. She kept replaying possible questions in her mind, preparing answers, trying to anticipate every line of attack. Henriksen found her before the afternoon session, sat down across from her without saying anything. Just his presence was calming, a reminder that she was not alone in this. "You are going to do fine," he said finally. "Just tell the truth. That is all they need to hear." What if the truth is not enough? What if they decide to believe him instead of us? Then we keep fighting. We appeal. We go public. We find another way. But I do not think it will come to that. The evidence is too strong. Hargrove is finished. He just does not know it yet. Kate wanted to believe him, but she had seen too much in the past months, knew how power protected power, how the system could bend to shield its own. The afternoon session began with Viktor Antonov's videotaped testimony. The old Russian had been too ill to attend in person, but his deposition had been recorded at Walter Reed. Kate watched the screen as Viktor told his story. The man was dying, that much was obvious. But his voice was strong, his memory clear. He recounted every detail of Hargrove's crimes with the precision of the trained observer he had been. When the video ended, the room was silent. Even Hargrove's lawyer looked shaken. This was not just accusations from bitter Americans. This was corroboration from an independent foreign witness who had nothing to gain and everything to lose. Then the judge advocate called Kate Morrison to the stand. She walked forward, feeling every eye in the room on her, sat in the witness chair and raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth, felt the weight of her father's dog tag beneath her uniform. Senator Miller conducted the direct examination. He asked about her childhood, her relationship with her father, his character and values, the kind of man Thomas Morrison had been. Kate spoke from the heart, described how her father had taught her to shoot not as a weapon, but as a responsibility, how he had emphasized honor and integrity above all else, how he had lived his values even when it cost him. She described receiving news of his death, the inconsistencies in the official story, the entry wound to the back of his head that made no tactical sense, how those questions had driven her to become a sniper herself, trying to understand the world her father had inhabited. Then she recounted meeting Henriksen, learning about Hargrove's crimes, the decision to go to Afghanistan to recover Viktor Antonov in the evidence, the firefight, the extraction, all of it in clear, factual language. When Miller finished, Hargrove's lawyer stood for cross-examination. He approached like a predator, circling wounded prey. Sergeant Morrison, you claim to have gone to Afghanistan to recover evidence. But is it not true that you went AWOL from your unit, that you violated orders in military law? I was on emergency leave, approved by my commanding officer. Emergency leave to travel to a war zone? To consort with a foreign national wanted for questioning? Viktor Antonov was not wanted. He was a witness with information about crimes committed by General Hargrove. The lawyer smiled coldly. You keep saying crimes, but you are not a lawyer. You are not an investigator. You are a sniper with a personal grudge against a superior officer. Is it not true that you blame General Hargrove for your father's death because you cannot accept that your father died in combat like thousands of other service members? Kate felt anger rising but forced it down. My father was murdered, shot from behind by someone he trusted. The evidence proves it. The evidence you illegally obtained while AWOL in a foreign country? I obtained evidence of treason. That is my duty as a Marine. Your duty was to follow orders. Instead, you took it upon yourself to play detective, to pursue a personal vendetta. It was not personal. Kate's voice rose despite her attempts to stay calm. My father was trying to stop a traitor. He died for it. I am finishing what he started. The lawyer pounced. So you admit this is personal. You admit you are motivated by revenge, not justice. I am motivated by truth, by honor, by the oath I took to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The exchange went on for another hour, the lawyer probing for weaknesses, trying to make Kate seem unstable or vindictive. Kate deflecting, staying as calm as possible, focusing on the facts. But it was exhausting, brutal in a different way than combat, but no less demanding. Finally, the judge advocate called for a recess. Kate stepped down from the witness stand feeling drained. She had survived cross-examination, but barely. Had she been convincing? Had her testimony helped or hurt the case? She could not tell. During the break, Senator Miller approached. You did well. Very well. He tried to rattle you and you held your ground. I felt like I was losing it toward the end. Miller shook his head. You were human, emotional. That is not weakness. It makes you credible. A jury will see a daughter who loved her father and is fighting for his honor. That is powerful. Kate wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at her. What if it was not enough? What if Hargrove walked away from this? The hearing resumed for closing arguments. Senator Miller summarized the evidence, emphasized the pattern of corruption, the multiple witnesses, the overwhelming documentation. He spoke with the authority of a man who had spent decades in public service and knew how to build a case. Hargrove's lawyer countered with procedure, questioned the chain of custody on the evidence, suggested the entire case was built on the unreliable testimony of foreign nationals and disgruntled subordinates, painted Hargrove as a decorated officer being railroaded by people with axes to grind. Then General Hargrove himself stood to make a statement. He was not required to testify, but chose to address the court directly. His voice was strong, confident. He spoke about his 35 years of service, the missions he had led, the lives he had saved. He acknowledged that mistakes had been made in Mogadishu, but said those were command decisions made under pressure, not criminal acts. He called Thomas Morrison a good Marine who had died serving his country, suggested that Kate was a grieving daughter who had been manipulated by bitter old men with their own agendas. It was a masterful performance. Hargrove looked every inch the distinguished officer. Sounded reasonable, even sympathetic. Kate could see people in the room responding to him, wanting to believe. The judge advocate called for final submissions and then declared the hearing adjourned. He would review the evidence and render a decision within 30 days. Until then, Hargrove would remain on administrative leave, his movements restricted. As the room emptied, Kate felt hollowed out. She had done everything she could, testified honestly, presented the truth, but would it be enough? Henriksen found her in the hallway. The old colonel looked tired but determined. We did good work today. Now we wait. Waiting is harder than fighting. Always has been. But we are Marines. We know how to wait. Kate and Henriksen walked out of the Pentagon together into a cold December evening. The city lights were coming on, reflecting off low clouds. Somewhere in those buildings, powerful people were having conversations about what to do with the Hargrove problem. How to minimize damage. How to protect the institution. Kate thought about her father, about Viktor Antonov dying in a hospital bed, about all the lives Hargrove had destroyed or ended in his quest for money and power. She thought about justice and whether it was even possible in a world where generals could commit treason and hide behind rank for decades. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You should have stayed quiet." Kate showed it to Henriksen. The colonel's face darkened. "That is a threat. We need to report this." To who? The same system that let Hargrove operate for 30 years? Henriksen had no answer for that. They parted ways at the metro station. Kate took the train back to her temporary apartment, hyper-aware of everyone around her, looking for threats, looking for watchers. The paranoia was exhausting but necessary. Back at the apartment, she found the door slightly ajar. She had locked it when she left that morning. She was certain of it. Kate drew her pistol and entered carefully. The place had been searched, professionally. Nothing obviously disturbed but small signs. Drawers not quite closed all the way. Books not quite aligned on the shelf. Someone had been through her belongings looking for something. She called military police. They came and took a report but said there was no sign of forced entry. Maybe she had forgotten to lock the door. Maybe she was mistaken about things being moved. Stress could do that to people. Kate did not argue, but she knew. Hargrove was sending a message. He could reach her anywhere. He could get to her whenever he wanted. She was not safe. That night, Kate did not sleep in the apartment. She checked into a hotel under a false name, paid cash, kept her pistol loaded and close, spent the hours until dawn reviewing every interaction, every conversation, looking for the threat she knew was coming. Her phone rang at 3 in the morning. The number showed Walter Reed Medical Center. Kate answered with a sense of dread already settling in her chest. "Sergeant Morrison, this is Dr. Chen. I am calling about Viktor Antonov. I am sorry to inform you that he passed away approximately 1 hour ago." His heart finally gave out. He went peacefully in his sleep. Kate thanked the doctor and ended the call. She sat in the hotel room darkness, holding the phone, feeling the weight of another loss. Viktor Antonov. Shadow. The last of the 3 brothers who had fought together in Mogadishu. The man who had helped her father gather evidence for 26 years. The man who had risked everything to make sure the truth came out. Gone. Kate thought about calling Henriksen, but it was the middle of the night. She thought about calling Rachel, but did not want to wake her sister with bad news. So she sat alone with her grief, adding it to the pile of sorrow she carried. In the morning, she learned that Viktor had left instructions. He wanted to be buried at Arlington, next to Thomas Morrison. Wanted the 2 brothers to rest side by side. Senator Miller had already begun the paperwork to make it happen. The funeral was small. Kate and Henriksen, Senator Miller, and a handful of congressional staff, a Marine honor guard. They laid Viktor Antonov to rest with full military honors despite his being a foreign national. The senator had pulled strings, called in favors, made sure the old warrior got the send-off he deserved. As the honor guard fired the 21-gun salute, Kate thought about the circle closing. 3 men who had discovered treason together, who had tried to stop it, who had been silenced by threats and fear. 2 of them dead now. Only Henriksen remained, and he was showing his age more every day. After the burial, Senator Miller pulled Kate aside. "I have news. The judge advocate made his decision early. He is recommending full courts-martial for General Hargrove on all charges. The evidence was too overwhelming to ignore." Kate felt relief flood through her. When? "The trial will begin in February. It will be public. It will be thorough. And if the prosecution does its job, Hargrove will spend the rest of his life in prison." Kate nodded, not trusting her voice. Miller continued, "I also have news about Commander Nash. We found him. He has agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. He is willing to confirm that Hargrove ordered him to kill your father." Kate felt something break inside her. The man who had pulled the trigger, the man who had shot her father in the back of the head, finally identified, finally caught, finally willing to tell the truth. Why? Why would he confess? Miller's smile was grim. Because he is a coward. Because he sees the walls closing in. Because he wants to save his own skin. We do not care about his motives. We care about his testimony. "When can I see him? When can I ask him why?" The senator shook his head. You cannot. He is in protective custody. No contact with anyone involved in the case. I am sorry, Kate. I know you want answers, but we cannot risk contaminating his testimony. Kate wanted to scream, wanted to demand the right to face the man who had killed her father. But she understood the legal reasoning. Justice required process, procedure, patience. She would have to wait. Again. The next weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Kate worked with the prosecution team, reviewing her testimony, preparing for the trial. She spoke to Rachel almost every night, drawing strength from her sister's voice, trying to be the strong older sister Rachel needed, even as Kate felt herself fraying at the edges. Henriksen remained her anchor. The old colonel checked in daily, made sure Kate was eating, sleeping, taking care of herself. He understood the toll this was taking, had lived through similar battles in his own past. One evening over dinner, Henriksen told Kate something he had never shared before. After Mogadishu, after we discovered what Hargrove did, I wanted to kill him, not arrest him, not testify against him. Just put a bullet in his head and be done with it. What stopped you? Henriksen smiled sadly. Your father, Thomas, said that if we killed Hargrove, we would become what he was. We would be murderers hiding our crime. He said the only way to honor the men who died was to expose the truth, to trust the system even when the system failed us. Did you agree? Not at first, but Thomas was right. Killing Hargrove would have made us criminals, would have dishonored everyone we were trying to avenge. Justice is slow and imperfect, but it is the only path that lets us keep our souls. Kate thought about that, thought about all the moments over the past months when she could have killed someone, when putting a bullet in the right place would have solved problems. But she had held back, had chosen the harder path, the path her father would have wanted. Do you think Dad would be proud of what we are doing? Henriksen reached across the table and gripped her hand. Thomas would be more proud of you than you can imagine. You took everything he taught you and used it to bring justice. You risked your life. You never gave up. That is exactly the daughter he raised you to be. Kate felt tears she had been holding back for weeks finally break through. She cried there in the restaurant, not caring who saw, cried for her father, for Victor, for all the years of pain and questions, for the weight she had been carrying. Henriksen just held her hand and let her cry, understanding that sometimes the bravest thing a warrior could do was let themselves feel. February arrived cold and gray. The trial of General William Hargrove began on a Monday morning in a military courtroom filled with press and observers. The case had gone public. National news coverage. Congressional hearings scheduled to follow. This was bigger than one general now. This was about accountability, about whether the system could police itself. Kate sat in the witness gallery watching the proceedings, watching Hargrove sit at the defense table looking calm and unworried, watching the prosecution build its case brick by brick. Commander Nash testified, admitted that Hargrove had ordered him to kill Thomas Morrison, said he had been following orders, that he thought Morrison was a threat to operational security, that he did not know until later that Hargrove was covering up crimes. Kate listened to the man describe shooting her father, the casual way he recounted it, like it was just another mission, just another target. She wanted to hate him but felt only emptiness. The financial evidence came next. Expert witnesses walking the jury through decades of transactions, showing how Hargrove had built a fortune while men under his command died, how he had sold information to enemies for money, how he had betrayed every oath he had ever taken. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Kate testified again, repeating her story. Other witnesses came forward, Marines who had served with Hargrove and seen things that had not made sense at the time, intelligence analysts who had tracked unusual patterns in classified information. The weight of evidence grew overwhelming. Through it all, Hargrove maintained his innocence, claimed he was being framed, that this was a conspiracy by people who envied his success. His lawyers fought hard, but they were trying to bail out a sinking ship with a teaspoon. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood and read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. Kate felt the words wash over her like absolution. Guilty. Hargrove was guilty. The system had worked. Justice had been served. Sentencing came a week later. Life in prison without possibility of parole, dishonorable discharge, forfeiture of all rank and benefits. William Hargrove would die in a military prison, his name forever synonymous with betrayal. As the guards led him away, Hargrove looked at Kate one final time. She met his eyes and saw something she had not expected, not rage or defiance, just exhaustion. The look of a man who had finally run out of road. Outside the courthouse, Kate stood with Henriksen and Senator Miller. The press wanted statements, but Kate had nothing to say to them. This had never been about publicity. It was about her father, about honor, about making sure good men were remembered truly. Senator Miller shook her hand. Your father would be proud. You brought a traitor to justice. That is no small thing. Kate managed a smile. Thank you for believing us, for helping make this happen. Miller's expression was solemn. Thank you for having the courage to fight. Most people would have accepted the official story and moved on. You refused to let your father be forgotten. That evening, Kate and Henriksen visited Arlington, stood together before two graves, Thomas Morrison and Victor Antonoff, brothers in arms, both dead because they had chosen honor over survival. We did it, Henriksen said quietly. We finished what you started. Hargrove will never hurt anyone again. Kate touched her father's headstone, felt the cold marble under her hand, thought about all the promises she had made and kept, all the sacrifices that had brought her to this moment. I kept my word, Dad. I made sure the truth came out. I made sure you got justice. The wind stirred the bare trees around them. Kate imagined it was her father's voice, telling her she had done well, telling her he was proud, telling her it was time to let go of the weight and live the life he had wanted for her. She turned to Henriksen. What do we do now? The old colonel smiled. Now we go home. We rest. We heal. We remember the good men we lost and honor them by living well. Kate thought about Wyoming, about Rachel waiting for her, about the ranch in the mountains and the quiet life she had left behind to pursue justice. It was time to go back. Time to be a sister again. Time to lay down the rifle and pick up the life her father had wanted her to live. But she would never forget, would never let the lessons fade. Thomas Morrison had taught her about honor and courage and the importance of standing for what was right, even when it cost everything. Those lessons would stay with her, would guide her, would remind her that some things were worth fighting for, worth dying for, worth living for. Kate and Henriksen walked away from the graves together, two warriors heading home after a long campaign. Behind them, the dead rested in peace, their honor restored, their sacrifice remembered. The war was over. Justice had been served, and Kate Morrison could finally begin to heal. Spring came to Wyoming like a promise kept. The snow melted from the high country, revealing green beneath. Wildflowers pushed through the warming earth. The ranch looked exactly as Kate Morrison remembered it, unchanged by the months she had been away. But she had changed. She knew that the moment she stepped out of the truck and breathed the mountain air. Rachel was waiting on the porch, tall and lean at 16, her father's rifle leaning against the rail beside her. She did not run to Kate or cry or make a scene. She just stood there with that steady Morrison gaze, waiting. When Kate climbed the steps, Rachel pulled her into a fierce hug that said everything words could not. You came back, Rachel said simply. I promised I would. They stood together on the porch, looking out at the land their grandfather had homesteaded, their father had loved, and they would inherit. 3 generations of Morrisons had learned to shoot in these hills, had learned what honor meant, had learned that some things were worth fighting for even when the fight seemed impossible. Inside, the house smelled of coffee and wood smoke. Rachel had kept everything running while Kate was gone. The horses fed and exercised, the property maintained, bills paid from the account their father had left. At 16, she had shouldered responsibilities that would have broken most adults. Kate looked at her sister with new respect. I am sorry I left you alone for so long. Did you really, or did you just tell yourself that to get through? Rachel poured 2 cups of coffee, the ritual their father had taught them. Both. I was angry sometimes, scared a lot, but I knew you were doing what had to be done, and I knew Dad would be proud. They sat at the kitchen table where they had eaten 1,000 meals with Thomas Morrison, where he had taught them to calculate windage and elevation, where he had explained the difference between shooting and marksmanship. His chair sat empty, but his presence filled the room. Tell me everything, Rachel said. So Kate did. She told her sister about Henriksen and the evidence, about Afghanistan and Victor Antonoff, about the firefight in the mountains and the desperate extraction, about the trial and Commander Nash's confession, and General Hargrove being led away in handcuffs to spend the rest of his life in prison. Rachel listened without interrupting, her eyes never leaving Kate's face. When the story was finished, she reached across the table and took her sister's hand. Dad would be so proud of you. You got justice for him. You made sure his name was cleared. Kate felt tears threatening, but held them back. I wish he was here to know it. He knows. Rachel's voice was certain. Wherever he is, he knows. And he is proud. They spent the afternoon together, falling back into familiar rhythms. Feeding horses, checking fences. The physical work was grounding after months of testimony and legal battles and living in temporary housing. Kate felt herself beginning to relax for the first time since Afghanistan. That evening, Rachel brought out their father's journal, the one he had kept for years, documenting his thoughts on marksmanship and life and raising daughters alone. Kate had not known it existed. I found it in his workshop 6 months ago, Rachel explained. He wrote in it almost every day. Lessons he wanted to teach us, things he wished he could tell us. The last entry was the day before he left for Afghanistan. Kate opened the journal with trembling hands. Her father's precise handwriting filled the pages. Technical notes about wind calls and ballistics mixed with reflections about watching his daughters grow. Worries about whether he was being a good father. Hope that he was teaching them the right things. The final entry was dated December 22nd, 2 years ago. Tomorrow I leave for what I hope is my last mission. I promised Katie this would be the end, that I would come home and stay home, be the father and grandfather she and Rachel deserve. Part of me knows I might not keep that promise. The situation in Afghanistan is complicated. Hargrove's shadow hangs over everything. But I go anyway because some debts can only be paid in person. If I do not come back, I want my girls to know this. I am proud of them beyond words. Katie with her healing hands and fierce heart. Rachel with her gift and her strength. They are the best of me. Whatever happens, they will be fine. They are Morrisons. We do not quit. We do not break. We hold the line. Semper Fi. Kate read the entry 3 times. Her father had known. Had gone to Afghanistan, understanding he might not return. Had chosen to go anyway because he believed some things were worth dying for. The revelation should have made her angry, but instead brought strange peace. Her father had made his choice with open eyes, had died as he had lived, fighting for what he believed was right. Rachel was watching her. Does it help, knowing he chose it? Kate thought about that. Yes, it helps. He was not a victim. He was a warrior who understood the patent and paid it willingly. The sisters sat together as darkness fell outside. Kate told Rachel about Victor Antonov's final words, about Henriksen's wisdom, about Senator Miller and the son he had lost, about all the lives Hargrove had destroyed and all the people who had fought to bring him to justice. What do you do now? Rachel asked. You finished the mission. You got Dad's justice. What comes next? Kate had been asking herself that question for weeks. She had spent so long focused on one goal that she had not thought about what came after. The Marine Corps wanted her back. Her service was exemplary. She could have a career. But did she want it? I am not sure, Kate admitted. Everything I have done for the past year has been about Dad, about proving what happened to him. I do not know who I am without that mission. Rachel smiled. Then maybe it is time to find out. Dad would not want you to spend your whole life looking backward. He would want you to live. Really live. Find joy and purpose and maybe even love. Kate thought about the weight she had been carrying. Her father's death, Victor's sacrifice, Henriksen's guilt. All the grief and anger and determination that had driven her. Maybe it was time to set it down. Not forget it, but let it rest. Over the next weeks, Kate fell back into ranch life. She rose with the sun and worked until dark. Repaired fences and tended livestock. Rode the high country trails their father had loved. Slowly, the tension that had lived in her shoulders for a year began to ease. The nightmares came less frequently. She started sleeping through the night. Rachel continued her training, shooting every morning as the sun came up. Kate spotted for her, calling wind and distance. Watched her little sister hit targets at 1,200 yards with casual precision. The girl was gifted beyond anything Kate had seen. Better than their father had been at twice her age. Better than most military snipers ever became. You could go professional, Kate said one morning after Rachel nailed a particularly difficult shot. Competition shooting, maybe even Olympics. Rachel lowered her rifle and looked at Kate. Is that what you want me to do? I want you to do whatever makes you happy. The 16-year-old was quiet for a moment. I love shooting, but I do not love it the way Dad did. For him, it was sacred, a calling. For me, it is just something I am good at. What do you love? Teaching. Rachel's answer came immediately. I love showing people how to shoot, how to be safe and accurate, how to understand what they are doing. I have been giving lessons to some kids in town, seeing them improve, watching them gain confidence. That is what makes me happy. Kate felt pride swell in her chest. Dad would love that. He always said the point of skill was to pass it on. Rachel smiled. Maybe when I graduate, I could turn the ranch into a proper shooting school. Teach veterans, teach kids, carry on what Dad believed in. The idea took root in Kate's mind. A Morrison Shooting Academy, a place where their father's philosophy could live on, where people could learn not just how to shoot, but why it mattered, how precision and discipline and respect for the weapon could teach larger lessons about life. The more Kate thought about it, the more right it felt. This could be her mission. Not revenge or justice, but legacy. Building something that honored her father by helping others, teaching what he had taught her. She and Rachel spent evenings planning, talking about curriculum and facilities, how many students they could handle, what kind of instructors they would need. Rachel had already been thinking about this, had notebooks full of ideas. She just needed Kate's help to make it real. In May, Henriksen visited. The old colonel looked better than he had in Washington. The mountain air and distance from politics seemed to agree with him. He walked the property with Kate, evaluating it with a trainer's eye. This could work, he said finally. You have the space. The natural range setup is better than most military facilities. The isolation is good for intensive training. You could build something special here. Would you help? Kate asked. Be an instructor? Teach what you taught me? Henriksen smiled. I think I could be convinced. I am too old for another war. Teaching the next generation sounds like a good way to spend whatever time I have left. They shook hands on it there in the Wyoming hills. A partnership born from shared grief, forged in Afghanistan, now building towards something hopeful. Senator Miller sent a letter in June. He had been working with the Pentagon to establish a new oversight program for special operations, making sure what happened with Hargrove could never happen again. He wanted Kate to serve on an advisory board, help design accountability measures, use her experience to protect other service members. Kate accepted. It was work she could do remotely, a way to continue serving without returning to active duty. Another piece of her father's legacy, ensuring the system that had failed him would be stronger for those who came after. The summer passed in planning and preparation. They converted the barn into classroom space, built covered firing positions at various ranges, cleared sight lines, and established safety protocols. Rachel handled the administrative work, surprisingly good at organizing and scheduling. Kate focused on curriculum development, working with Henriksen to create a program that balanced technical skill with ethical foundation. By August, they were ready for their first class. 10 students, 5 veterans dealing with PTSD, who needed to reconnect with a skill that had once defined them. 3 local teenagers interested in competitive shooting, 2 middle-aged civilians who wanted to learn for personal protection, a diverse group united by interest in precision marksmanship. Kate stood before them on the first morning feeling her father's presence like a hand on her shoulder. She wore his dog tag along with Henriksen's. 2 men who had shaped her. 2 warriors who had understood that shooting was about more than hitting targets. Welcome to Morrison Academy, she said. My father, Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Morrison, believed that anyone who picks up a rifle takes on a sacred responsibility. Not to use that skill lightly, not to glorify violence, but to understand that precision and discipline in shooting reflects precision and discipline in life. Over the next 2 weeks, we will teach you to shoot. More importantly, we will teach you why it matters. The class went better than Kate had hoped. Henriksen was a natural teacher, patient and encouraging. Rachel connected especially well with the younger students, teaching them fundamentals with the same care their father had used with her. Kate found herself channeling Thomas Morrison in ways she had not expected, using his phrases, teaching his methods, keeping him alive through the lessons. One of the veteran students was a former Marine named Marcus, late 30s, missing his left leg below the knee from an IED in Fallujah. He had been a machine gunner, not a precision shooter, but wanted to learn, needed to prove to himself he could still do hard things. Kate worked with him individually, adapting positions and techniques for his prosthetic. Marcus struggled at first, frustrated by the ways his body no longer worked the way it once had, but he persisted, kept showing up, kept trying. On the final day of class, Marcus made a clean shot at 800 yards, his first ever at that distance. When the spotter confirmed the hit, the big man broke down crying, not from sadness but from relief. He could still do this. He was still a warrior, even if the war had changed him. Kate understood that feeling. She had been changed by her own war, by Afghanistan and the trial and everything that came before. But like Marcus, she had found a way forward, had discovered that being a warrior was not about the fight, but about the spirit that drove you to keep going. The Academy's reputation grew. Word spread through military communities and veteran networks. By fall, they had a waiting list. They hired 2 more instructors, both retired military with combat experience. Expanded the facilities, started offering specialized courses in long-range precision and tactical applications. Kate found purpose in the work. Each student represented a chance to pass on her father's wisdom. To teach that skill and honor went together. That the rifle was a tool, but the person behind it determined its meaning. Rachel blossomed as an instructor. At 16, she had the confidence of someone much older. Students respected her because she was genuinely gifted and genuinely cared about their success. She had inherited their father's teaching gift along with his shooting ability. One evening in October, Kate and Rachel rode horseback into the high country where Thomas Morrison had taken them as children. The aspen leaves were turning gold, the air sharp with approaching winter. They stopped at a clearing that overlooked the valley, the ranch visible far below. Rachel broke the silence. "Do you think Dad would be proud of what we built?" Kate looked at her sister, at the young woman she had become, strong and capable and kind. Everything Thomas Morrison had hoped his daughters would be. "I think he would be overwhelmed," Kate said. "We took everything he taught us and turned it into something that will help hundreds of people. We kept his memory alive in the best possible way. Not through grief, but through purpose." "I miss him," Rachel said quietly. "Every day I miss him." "Me too. But he is here, in every lesson we teach, in every student who learns to shoot with honor and discipline, in every life we help rebuild. Dad is not gone, he just changed form." They sat together as the sun set, painting the mountains in shades of amber and rose. Kate thought about the journey that had brought her here. From grief to rage to justice to finally peace, it had been the hardest year of her life. But it had also been necessary. She had needed to fight for her father's honor, needed to finish what he started, needed to prove to herself that good people could still win. November brought the first serious snow. The Academy paused operations for winter, planning to resume in spring. Kate used the quiet months to write. She had been approached by a publisher who wanted her story, a book about her father, about Hargrove's crimes, about the fight for justice. Kate had resisted at first, but Rachel convinced her. "People need to know," her sister argued. "Dad's story, Victor's story, all of it, not for glory but as a warning, to show that corruption can happen anywhere, that it takes courage to fight it, that justice is possible if good people refuse to quit." Kate agreed. She spent the winter writing, reliving memories both painful and precious. Hendrickson helped fill in details she had not known. Senator Miller provided context about the political battles. The book took shape slowly, honestly, with all the complexity and contradiction that real life contained. She called it The Last Shot, both a reference to her father's final moments and to the idea that sometimes you only get one chance to do the right thing, that you have to make it count. In December, Kate returned to Arlington National Cemetery. She had not been back since Viktor Antonov's funeral. Now she came to pay respects and to deliver news. She knelt between 2 graves, her father and the Russian who had been his brother. The marble was cold under her hand, but the gesture felt warm, connected. "Dad, Victor," she said softly, "we did it. The Academy is running. We have helped over 60 students so far. Rachel is an incredible teacher. Hendrickson says she is better than you were at her age, Dad, and you know he would not say that lightly." Kate paused, gathering her thoughts. "I wrote a book about you, about what you did and why it mattered. It is going to be published next year. People will know the truth. They will understand that you died fighting corruption, that you were a hero in the truest sense." She traced her father's name carved in marble, Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Morrison. The words no longer felt incomplete. They had been amended by action, by justice served, by a daughter who had refused to let lies stand. "I am okay now," Kate continued. It took a long time, but I am okay. I still miss you every day. Still wish I could talk to you, hear your advice, watch you teach Rachel. But I am not broken anymore. I am living the life you wanted for me. Living fully, finding purpose, honoring you by being the best version of myself I can be." She stood, brushing snow from her knees. Before leaving, she placed two items on the graves. On her father's, a spent brass casing from the first shot she had fired as an instructor. On Victor's, a photo of the three men in Mogadishu, preserved in a weatherproof frame. "Brothers," she said, "rest well, your work is done, your legacy lives on." The winter holidays were different that year. Kate and Rachel celebrated at the ranch, their first Christmas without their father. But it was not sad. They honored his memory by living as he would have wanted, working hard, shooting in the morning, sharing stories, looking forward instead of back. They called Henriksen and invited him to join them. The old colonel arrived on Christmas Eve with stories and a bottle of decent whiskey. The three of them sat by the fire, talking about the past year and the year to come, about students who had struggled and succeeded, about plans for expanding the academy. Henriksen had news. The Pentagon had approved a program to send active duty snipers to Morrison Academy for advanced training. It was recognition that what they were doing mattered, that their approach, combining technical skill with ethical grounding, was valuable. "Your father would be so proud," Henriksen told Rachel, "not just of your shooting, but of the person you are becoming. You have his gift for teaching, his patience, his understanding that the rifle is just a tool. The person behind it is what matters." Rachel smiled, accepting the praise with Morrison humility. "I learned from the best." That night, Kate stood on the porch looking at stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch. The same stars her father had looked at from this same porch. The same stars that shone over Afghanistan where he had died. The same stars that would shine long after she was gone. But his work would continue. Through Rachel, through the academy, through every student who learned that skill and honor were inseparable. Through the book that would tell his story. Through the changes in military oversight that would prevent another Hargrove. Thomas Morrison had died, but his impact would ripple outward for generations. That was legacy. That was immortality. That was what it meant to live and die with honor. Spring returned as it always did. The academy reopened with twice as many applicants as spots. Kate and Rachel interviewed each one personally, looking for students who wanted to learn for the right reasons, who understood that shooting was a responsibility, not a game. Among the applicants was a young woman named Sarah, 23, former Army, medically discharged after being wounded in Syria. She had been a combat medic, like Kate had been before becoming a sniper. She wanted to learn precision shooting to help with PTSD, to find focus and calm in a world that felt chaotic. Kate saw herself in Sarah. The same drive, the same need for purpose, the same understanding that sometimes the path forward required going back to basics, learning discipline, finding center. She accepted Sarah into the program and took personal interest in her development. Watched her struggle with the fundamentals, then gradually improve. Saw confidence returning as skills developed. By the end of the 2-week course, Sarah was hitting targets at 600 yards consistently. On the final day, Sarah approached Kate. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "How did you do it? How did you go from being a medic to a sniper? How did you reconcile saving lives with taking them?" Kate thought about the question. It was one she had asked herself many times. "I learned that both came from the same place, the desire to protect. When I was a medic, I protected people by healing them. As a sniper, I protected people by stopping threats before they could do harm. Different tools, same purpose." Sarah nodded slowly. "I have been struggling with that, feeling like I failed because I could not save everyone, like maybe I should have done more." Kate gripped her shoulder. "You did not fail. You served with honor. You gave everything you could. That is all anyone can ask. Now you have to learn to forgive yourself and find a new mission, a new way to serve." "Is that what you did? Found a new mission?" Kate looked around at the academy, at Rachel teaching a student proper breathing technique, at Henriksen demonstrating how to read Mirage, at all the work they had built from grief and determination. "Yes, I found a new mission, and it saved me as surely as I saved anyone on a battlefield. Purpose is healing. Service is healing. Finding a way to help others is the best medicine I know." Sarah left the academy with new skills and new hope. She promised to stay in touch. Maybe come back for advanced courses. Kate watched her drive away and felt satisfaction. Another life touched. Another person helped forward. Another ripple from Thomas Morrison's legacy. The book published in May to strong reviews. Kate did interviews, always steering conversation away from herself and toward her father, toward the message about accountability and honor, toward the importance of speaking truth even when it was difficult. The book found an audience among veterans and military families, people who understood the cost of service, who knew that heroes were often complicated people who made hard choices, who appreciated that justice sometimes required patience and courage and refusal to quit. Sales exceeded expectations. Kate donated all proceeds to a scholarship fund for children of fallen service members. Rachel helped administer it, making sure money went to kids who needed it most. It was another way of honoring their father, turning his death into something that helped others live better. Summer brought a surprise visitor. Commander Nash, the man who had pulled the trigger, who had shot Thomas Morrison in the back of the head, arrived at the ranch unannounced. He had been released from prison after serving 3 years of a reduced sentence in exchange for his testimony against Hargrove. Kate saw him standing at the gate and felt rage flare hot and immediate. This man had killed her father, had stolen him from his daughters, had orphaned Rachel when she was barely a teenager. Rachel appeared beside Kate. "What do we do?" Kate took a breath, forced herself to be calm. "We hear what he has to say, then we decide." They met Nash at the gate, not inviting him onto the property. He looked older than his years. Prison had aged him. Guilt had aged him. He stood with his head down, unable to meet Kate's eyes. "I know you do not want to see me," he began. "I know I am the last person you want here. But I had to come. I had to tell you in person how sorry I am." "Sorry does not bring my father back," Kate said coldly. "I know. Nothing I say or do can change what I did. I pulled the trigger. I killed a good man because I was following orders I should have questioned. That guilt will be with me until I die." Rachel spoke up. "Why did you do it? Why did you not refuse?" Nash finally looked up. "Because I was a coward. Because Hargrove had leverage over me. Personal things I did not want exposed. He threatened to destroy my career, my family. So I did what he ordered. And I have regretted it every second since." Kate wanted to hate him, wanted to rage at him. But looking at the broken man before her, she felt only emptiness. Hate required energy she did not have anymore. This man was already punished, already living with what he had done. "Why come here? What do you want from us?" Nash shook his head. "I do not want anything. I just needed you to know that your father's last words were not hatred or fear. After I shot him, he was still alive for a few seconds. He looked at me and said, 'Tell my daughters I love them. Tell Katie to take care of Rachel.' That was all. He died thinking of you." The words hit Kate like a physical blow. She had imagined her father's final moments so many times, had tortured herself with images of his pain and fear. But this was different. This was a man thinking of his daughters even as he died, loving them even in the last seconds of consciousness. Rachel was crying silently. Kate pulled her close, holding her sister as grief washed through both of them. Not the sharp grief of fresh loss, but the deep ache of permanent absence. Their father was gone, would always be gone, but he had loved them to the very end. Nash waited silently until they composed themselves. "I will go now. I just wanted you to know. He was a better man than I could ever be. And you both are his legacy." He turned to leave, but Kate called after him. "Wait." Nash stopped. "What will you do now? Where will you go?" He shrugged. "I have no idea. I lost everything. Family wants nothing to do with me. Navy discharged me dishonorably. I am 42 years old and I have to start over with nothing." Kate looked at Rachel. Her sister's eyes were still wet, but there was something thoughtful in her expression. She gave Kate a small nod. "We have a position open for groundskeeper here at the academy," Kate said. "It does not pay much. You would be maintaining facilities, helping with logistics, doing work that needs doing, but nobody wants to do. Interested?" Nash stared at her. "Why would you offer me anything?" "Because holding on to hatred does not serve us. Because my father believed in redemption. Because you helped convict Hargrove, and that took courage, even if it was courage that came too late. And because everyone deserves a chance to do better." Nash's eyes filled with tears. "I do not deserve your mercy." "Probably not. But we are offering it anyway. You can spend the rest of your life carrying guilt, Or you can spend it doing something useful. Your choice. Nash accepted. He moved into a small cabin on the property and became part of the academy's daily operations. He never tried to justify what he had done, never asked for forgiveness. Just worked quietly, showing up early and staying late, finding purpose in service. Kate watched him interact with students and saw something shift. The guilt was still there, but so was determination to be better, to earn the mercy he had been shown. It was not redemption exactly, but it was a start. Rachel was the one who articulated what Kate was feeling. Dad would approve. He always said the point of punishment was not revenge, but rehabilitation, helping people become better than they were. Kate thought about all the lessons their father had taught, about honor and courage, and the importance of doing what was right even when it was hard. Offering Nash a job had been hard. Watching him work alongside them was hard, but it felt right in a way that vengeance never would have. The summer passed in work and purpose. The academy thrived. Students came and learned and left better than they arrived. Kate and Rachel refined their curriculum, always looking for ways to improve. Henriksen brought wisdom and experience. Nash contributed through quiet labor, an example of how mistakes could be acknowledged if not undone. In August, Kate received a letter from the Marine Corps. They wanted to honor her at a ceremony in Washington, recognize her service and sacrifice, present her with the Navy Cross for Valor in Afghanistan. It was the highest decoration for combat valor outside the Medal of Honor. Kate did not want to go, did not want the attention or the medal or the speeches. But Henriksen convinced her. You earn this. More importantly, accepting it honors everyone who fought alongside you. Your father, Victor, every Marine who has ever stood up for what was right. So Kate went to Washington with Rachel beside her. They stood in a formal ceremony room filled with brass and politicians. The Commandant of the Marine Corps pinned the Navy Cross on Kate's uniform and spoke about courage and sacrifice and the highest traditions of the service. But the words that mattered most came after, when Senator Miller approached. He was older now, slower, but his eyes were bright. He handed Kate a photograph. It showed her father and Private James Miller together in Mogadishu, two young Marines grinning at the camera. Brothers in all the ways that mattered. I want you to have this, Miller said. My son would have liked your father. They were cut from the same cloth. Men who understood that service was about protecting others, not seeking glory. Kate accepted the photograph with gratitude. That evening, she and Rachel visited Arlington one final time before heading home. They placed the photograph on Thomas Morrison's grave, securing it in another weatherproof frame. Now Dad has his friend close, Rachel said. They stood together as the sun set over the rows of white markers, thousands of warriors resting in this sacred ground. Each one a story of sacrifice, each one a reminder that freedom was not free, that every generation had to choose whether to fight for what they believed in or let it slip away. Thomas Morrison had made his choice, had fought corruption even when it cost him everything, had died so that truth could be known and justice could be served. His daughters had carried that fight to completion, had honored his sacrifice by refusing to let it be in vain. But the fight was not really over. It never was. There would always be new threats, new challenges, new people who valued power over honor. The only question was whether good people would stand up to them. Kate thought about the academy, about the students they trained, about teaching the next generation that skill and ethics went together. That being a warrior was about protecting the vulnerable, not exploiting them. That honor was not just a word, but a way of living. That was her mission now, not revenge or justice, but preparation. Making sure that when the next threat arose, there would be people ready to stand against it. People who understood what Thomas Morrison had understood, that some things were worth fighting for, worth dying for, worth living for. The flight back to Wyoming was quiet. Kate dozed while Rachel read. When they landed in Casper and drove back to the ranch, the mountains were touched with first snow on the highest peaks. Winter was coming again, the cycle continuing, life moving forward. At the ranch, the lights were on. Henriksen had dinner waiting. Nash had chopped firewood for the coming cold. Students would arrive next week for the fall session. Work would continue. Purpose would be served. Kate stood on the porch one last time before going inside. The same porch where her father had stood, where he had taught his daughters to be strong, where he had promised to come home and been unable to keep that promise. But in a way, he had come home, through Kate and Rachel, through the academy, through every life they touched and every student they taught. Thomas Morrison lived on in the work they did and the values they embodied. Kate touched the dog tags around her neck, her father's and Henrikson's. Two warriors who had shaped her. Two men who had understood that being a Marine was not about rank or medals, but about standing for something larger than yourself. She would carry their lessons forward, would teach them to the next generation, would make sure that honor and courage and sacrifice were not just words, but living principles. The door opened behind her. Rachel stood silhouetted in the warm light. "You coming in? Dinner is ready." Kate took one last look at the stars, at the mountains, at the land that had raised her. Then she turned toward the light, toward her sister, toward home. "Yeah," she said, "I am coming in." She walked inside to warmth and family and purpose. The door closed behind her, shutting out the cold. But not shutting out memory, not shutting out legacy. Those things lived inside her now, were part of who she had become. Kate Morrison, daughter of Thomas Morrison, sniper and teacher and keeper of promises. She had finished what her father started, had fought for justice and won, had turned grief into purpose and loss into legacy. The last shot had been fired. The mission was complete. Now it was time to live the life her father had wanted for her, to find joy and peace and meaning in the quiet work of helping others become their best selves. Outside, the Wyoming night deepened. Inside, a family gathered around a table, sharing a meal and sharing stories. The living honoring the dead by living well. The past informing the future without consuming it. And somewhere in the great mystery beyond, Thomas Morrison rested easy, knowing his daughters were safe, knowing his sacrifice had mattered, knowing the legacy he left behind was in the best possible hands. The last shot had been fired, but the echo would ring through generations, a reminder that honor never dies, that courage never fades, that one person standing for what is right can change the world. And that was enough. That was everything. That was the last shot that mattered most. Not the one that ended a life, but the one that gave life meaning. Not the bullet that killed, but the lesson that healed. Not the war that was won, but the peace that followed. Kate Morrison had found that peace, had earned it through fire and blood and unshakable determination, had proven herself worthy of the name she carried, Morrison, a name that meant something now. That stood for honor and courage and the refusal to let truth be buried. She would carry it forward, would teach others to carry it, would make sure that when her time came, she too would rest easy, knowing she had fought the good fight and finished the race and kept the faith. The last shot had been fired, but the mission, the real mission of living with honor and teaching others to do the same, that mission would continue forever. Because some things never end, some legacies never fade, some lessons echo through eternity. And Thomas Morrison's lesson, carried forward by his daughters and taught to all who would listen, was simple and profound. Stand for something. Fight for it. Never quit. And when your time comes, leave the world better than you found it. That was the last shot. The one that mattered. The one that changed everything. And Kate Morrison had fired it true. I spent 3 months researching this story, and what struck me most wasn't the impossible 3,247-meter shot. It was Kate's choice at the end. When Commander Nash showed up at her gate, the man who pulled the trigger on her father, she had every right to turn him away. Instead, she offered redemption. That's the difference between a warrior and a killer. Kate understood what her father knew. Honor isn't about the shot you take, it's about the shot you don't take. What would you have done in her place? I'd love to hear your thoughts below. And if this story resonated with you, there are more like it coming. Hit subscribe so you don't miss them.